Chapter 4:14, Like taking candy from a baby. The kingdom of Bredia is a little country with a population of almost 300,000 people, including a small population of beast men. Bordered by a river to the north, a small sea to the south, a bamboo forest to the east, and woodlands to the west, the country of Bredia mainly thrived in wood production, mining, and foreign trade as well as tourism. The country's landscape was cheerful, impressive architecture, jade green fields, and green, open fields were just a sliver of the elegance Bredia had to offer, which was why the country was treasured among foreigners. The people of Bredia were neighborly towards foreigners and tended to welcome them with open arms. They felt foreigners could fortify the country's well-being. Bredia had moderate laws and law enforcement, which was expected in their circumstances. The people were troubled by the growing bandit problems as Bredia had a lot of forests that had been used by the bandits to hide. The kingdom was divided into 3 baronies, Bradford, Whiteridge, and Sarton on top of the capital where the king resides. After the tournament, 3 baronies were reduced to 2 as Bradford became a kingdom itself under Ghost. There was visible tension among the people after what happened in the tournament. Many criticized King Bredia for letting go of Bradford while some sympathized with the king. Instead of carriages suited for the king, Michael decided to fly to the capital along with the group of escorts King Bredia sent. The 1/3 of the army King Bredia agreed to give him had just reached Bradford and were making themselves at home. It would take at least a couple of weeks for them to relocate their families according to Gaia. It was Gaia's idea to relocate the soldiers' families to Bradford. She was already having a meeting with Elder Sandra to discuss the financial side of things needed for relocation. The plus side of this was Bradford had so many empty lands which could be used to build new homes. The downside was it would take some time before finishing all the new homes required. According to Gaia, until the soldiers completely sever their ties with Bredia, their loyalty would remain to King Bredia instead of Ghost and her. It made sense to Michael, hence he went with her plan. After all, she had more knowledge and experience in ruling than him. She was so excited as he had never seen Gaia act so excited. "We have so much work to do." "How long will this take?" asked Gaia while flying towards the capital of Bredia. The 5 of the escorts flying in front of them had 3 armed soldiers who seemed to be the royal guards, and one of the remaining 2 was an old man in his 70s while the other was a middle-aged man dressed in crimson-red robes. The 2 of them were visibly surprised. They didn't expect the king and his girlfriend would travel to another place, a place that viewed them as enemies without any soldiers or bodyguards. Obviously, Ghost was powerful, but not that powerful to escape the wrath of an entire country if they chose to attack him. After almost 3 hours of flying, the outskirts of the capital began to come into their view. The city was surrounded by a city wall made of granite stones. Golden paddy fields blanketed the land outside of the city walls, creating beautiful scenery. While flying forwards, the 2 men without wearing the metal armor drew some signs in the air as golden runes materialized before them. The golden runes flew towards the city before fading away. Then nothing happened. They just continued their journey towards the castle that remained tall and majestic at the end of the city. The castle of Bredia wasn't as majestic as the castle of House Kane. In fact, it was not even fair for this castle to be compared with House Kane. Still, the castle was elegant. 10 slim, round towers that looked as though they were piercing the sky were the first they saw of this castle and were connected by giant, firm walls made of white stone contrary to the blackish granite stone city wall. Tall, wide windows were scattered generously around the walls in seemingly perfect symmetry, along with symmetric holes for archers and artillery. A moderate gate with hefty metal doors, a regular bridge, and various artillery equipment guarded the only passage into the castle built upon a mountain top, but it was not the only way in, which fortunately only very few know. Since they were flying, they had no need of going through the main gate and the guards. As they were flying towards the castle, they noticed the various large houses scattered outside the castle gates. Surprisingly, the rich were comfortable with living outside the gates as well. This castle showed signs of expansion as some parts were clearly built more recently than others. The inhabitants were already working on another part and hoped to keep expanding. Many children playing on the paved pathways looked up at them with their hands waving. Many nobles failed to notice them, but Michael noticed the several groups of people gathered on the streets with labels and signboards. If he had to guess, he would say they were waiting for him, not to welcome but to show their disapproval. Poor people, he, chuckled Gaia looking at the protesters. They seemed clueless, which amused Gaia. She couldn't care less about what these Bredians think. Michael noticed the two men show their objection to her laughter by frowning. Yet, they knew better to open their mouths. One of the tall towers had a metal door that glowed before opening. Through the tower, they flew down into the throne hall where he saw a young girl in a sparkling blue dress that screamed princess. When Michael and Gaia landed in the middle of the throne hall, she turned back. Immediately the gentle smile on her face disappeared. Instead, a rather cold and murderous look appeared on her face. If one had an acute sense of hearing, they could hear her teeth grinding against each other and the rising beats of her heart. "Your Royal Highness," the five of them bowed towards her in unison while Gaia was busy scratching her ear. She did not even look at the princess. Michael on the other hand remained calm and cool as usual. "Humph," Princess Catherine snickered as she walked forward gracefully. "Where is the treasury?" asked Gaia looking around the throne hall. She wasn't impressed by the throne hall, not even a bit. Neither the modest braziers that enclosed each of the 14 alabaster columns light up the entire throne hall and engulf everything in a flickering radiance, nor did the lilac rug split the entire hall in half from the doors to the throne, while swallowtail banners with emblazoned tassels the walls impressed the Princess of Nagaland. She looked at the grand throne of bronze sitting atop a tall elevated platform quite a distance behind the princess. The throne was covered in hundreds of elaborate patterns, and fixed on each of the rather slim feet is a gemmed symbolic emblem. The fluffy pillows were a light lilac, and these too had been adorned with ornate quilting. Currently, the throne was empty as the king was nowhere to be seen. "The treasury will be the first place thieves would look for," the princess coldly said, shocking the men behind her. "Yeah, we hate thieves too," Michael let Gaia deal with the princess. It was funny to see Gaia talk to the princess with a serious face while she was obviously fanning Catherine's anger flames for fun. "Is that so?" Catherine gritted her teeth. "If you don't mind, lead the way please, princess. We have things to do, like ruling a kingdom," Gaia spoke, waving her hands. "Humph, follow me," yet again the princess snickered before turning back. She then began to walk towards a silver door guarded by a fully armored soldier who stood 7 foot tall. The soldier stomped the ground with his leg as the silver door slid open to reveal the pathway lit with golden chandeliers. Only their steps could be heard as no one uttered any word. The 5 men who escorted Michael here remained silent while following them behind. "La la la la, tudu. Tudu-tudu, la 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 la." Michael tried not to chuckle hearing Gaia singing. He didn't know the lyrics but enjoyed her funny gibberish. It seemed as though Gaia was trying to piss off Catherine. "Ta-tudu, tudu-tudu. Tututu, ta-tudu, tudu-tudu. Tututu, ta-tudu, tudu-tudu. Tututu, ta-tudu, tudu-tudu. Tututu, ta-tudu, tudu-tudu." Tututu. After hearing the same gibberish again and again for almost 15 minutes, Catherine couldn't hold back anymore. "Will you please shut up?" "Nope." "Hey ghost, remind me to invite the Winstons to the party." "I already sent the invites," said Michael. "Leave them alone. They are good people." Catherine almost lost her composure. She did not want people like Ghost to get close to the Winstons. Especially after what he did to Andrews and her. "We are good people. If not for us, somebody would have been under 6 feet by now," said Gaia. The others felt the situation getting tensed up by the second. They just wanted to get this done before the 2 girls try to kill each other. "When the time comes, Andrews will settle his debt," Catherine said firmly. "Let us pick one more thing from the treasury and we'll call it even." We will forget about saving his but at that time forever. How about that princess? Are you willing to settle your sweetheart's debt? Your Roy, the two unarmored men immediately tried to stop the princess, but it was too late as Catherine stopped them with a wave of her hand. She turned back to look at Gaia. I will settle his debt, but after this, you are never to speak of Andrews ever again. Deal. Michael couldn't believe how easily the princess got manipulated by Gaia. Unbelievable, Michael said to himself, hey, like taking candy from a baby. Too easy. Gaia laughed out aloud inside. The princess was unbelievably easy to manipulate. Gaia almost felt bad for not asking for a couple of more items instead of asking for only one more. Chapter 4:15, Army of Undead. Lord Dalar. Dalar was busy poking a severed head on his table when he heard a voice. He didn't have to turn back because he knew who it was, an apprentice he never wanted in the first place but got impressed by the knowledge he possessed about the undeads, Jonah. Jonah was dragging a dead body that reeked of putrid smell into Dalar's workshop. The workshop was a spacious hall, yet there was no empty space. Every nook and cranny had something. The wooden racks were lined up against the walls. Jars filled with weird eyeballs, body parts, black goo and bottles, dead bodies with countless cuts, and various tools could be seen in the room. After getting teleported to this dark mansion, Jonah entered into seclusion according to Dark Queen's instructions. 3 months later, he was able to reach Foundation Stage Level 10 and a few days cultivation away from reaching the body refining stage. Meanwhile, during his breaks, he worked with Dalar to find out more about the undeads and the alpha undeads. Their combined knowledge of undeads enabled them to come up with the most efficient way to kill the undeads. They were just a few days away from finishing the tests and let the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen know about the breakthrough. This was only a side project though. The main project assigned to Dalar by the Dark Lord was to summon more powerful netherals from the Nether Realm. In addition to more powerful netherals, he tasked Dalar to find a way to summon more netherals at a time. Since Dalar reached level 7 of core formation and got proficient in summoning, he was able to summon 50 netherals at body strengthening stage level 9 at a time. If it wasn't for the Dark Lord's order to stop summoning more netherals than they could fit in the combat hall next door, they would have had an army of netherals. Of course, it made sense not to summon more and more netherals because of 2 reasons. 1, they had no place for the undead army. If they let the undeads roam around in Dark Forest, the Guardians would definitely sense the undead presence. Second, Dalar could only bound 150 undeads using the Book of Netherals. If he summoned more, they would wreak havoc, probably rip him apart piece by piece. The second reason led to his current experimentation with alpha undeads. The alpha undeads Michael encountered on the Undead Island had a certain level of sentience. They controlled the undeads just as Dalar without any Book of Netherals. I hope this one don't end up like the last one, Jonah sighed. The body he was dragging was an alpha. The Dark Lord gave them a potion that paralyzed the undead as well as knocked them out unconscious. Dalar and Jonah killed 3 alpha undeads in their experiment. They still had 2 more alpha undeads, and after that, they would have to ask the Dark Lord to capture more alpha undeads if there were any on the Undead Island. I'm close, I can feel it. I just need to figure out the telepathic signals produced by the brain of an alpha. If I could pinpoint the signals and mimic the signals somehow, I can control the undeads like an alpha, Dalar explained while poking the head of the alpha on the table. The room was dark and gloomy. Only a couple of luminous mushrooms attached to the ceiling were their light source. The faint blue light produced by the mushrooms was barely enough to see where something was at. The alpha undeads were apparently sensitive to bright light, including sunlight. Any kind of bright light would be harmful to the alpha. The light sensitivity was not enough to kill an alpha, but it was enough to disorient them by burning their skin. So where is the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen? I haven't even seen the floating butler. It's Azazel, what? Asked Jonah, the floating butler. His name is Azazel, boom. The head situated, getting poked by Dalar suddenly exploded into bits and pieces. Jonah dashed aside to avoid the brain matter, yet he couldn't avoid them completely. Fuck. Dalar cursed as he punched the table with his big fist. Why the fuck can't I pinpoint the signals? At the moment, Ghost, Gaia, Catherine, and the 5 men were in front of the metal door with intricate symbols. The door stood almost 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide. The sheer size of the vault made Michael and Gaia excited to see the inside. Catherine placed her right hand on the silver door. Catherine Vinslev Bredia. After Catherine spoke, the ground beneath them lightly shivered as they heard a heavy rumbling noise from the other side of the door. Soon, the thousands of weird symbols on the door sparkled. A few seconds later, the door gently opened itself to reveal the treasury. However, when the door opened completely, Michael was disappointed, to say the least, as he saw nothing but a dimly lit hall with several wooden racks. This is underwhelming, Gaia sighed. As a princess, she had some idea where they would have stored all the wealth, but she expected at least a few million worths of gems and gold coins. This is the treasury? Asked Michael, creasing his brows. Of course it is. So according to the agreement and my word, you can pick any 2 things from here. Catherine seemed to be enjoying their disappointment. They were not idiots to keep all of their wealth in a single place where security was an issue. Like most of the kingdoms in Elon and Azer, they kept their wealth in Grand Spire Bank vaults. Grand Spire Bank was the safest place to keep wealth and precious items. It was like the Gringotts of this world. Instead of goblins, Grand Spire was run by elves and dwarves. A few days ago, when the king returned to the capital, he transferred all the remaining wealth in the treasury to the Grand Spire Bank branch in Bredia with the help of the Adventurer Guild. Only items that were identified by the scholars and deemed as junk remained in the treasury. Michael had already took a huge chunk of Kingdom Bredia from the king, so he did not feel any murderous anger towards the king. After all, in time, everything in this world would belong to him. He stepped into a dimly lit hall with the hopes of at least finding something interesting. System, scan everything in the room and let me know if you find something interesting. That will cost you 5,000 badass points. The system began to scan the entire hall. Gaia wanted to beat the crap out of the princess. Controlling her impulse to do so, she looked through the items in the wooden rack. I pity the people of Bradford. Catherine was unable to keep her mouth shut, recalling what happened at the tournament. Her father had never been ashamed like that ever before in his life. Granted, she knew it was partially her fault for what happened. Still, she hated Ghost as he almost killed Andrews and took a huge chunk of land from them. Shove that pity up your ass, Gaia mumbled in just enough voice for the princess to hear her but not too loud. What did you say? I said thank you. The 5 men behind the princess wanted this to be over as soon as possible before the situation escalated into a fight. They could see Catherine clenching her fist, looking at the back of the girl. The girl, on the other hand, was more focused on rummaging through the items on the rack. What is this? Gaia took an old parchment covered in dust. The parchment looked as though no one touched it for at least a couple of decades. She opened up the parchment to see a blueprint for a carriage. Seriously. She placed the spell back on the rack with enough for it to make a thud sound. System has found only one item that could interest the host. What? Only one? Michael asked the system in his mind. Yes. All the other items are mediocre at best and most of them are just junk. Where is that item you found? The system pointed to the item using the environmental scanning map as Michael made his way toward the item. One of the racks in front of him had countless parchments and other weird-looking objects covered in dust. He shoved all the objects aside to pick up a rusty old metal box. It was small as it fit in his palm. The rust covered the symbols on the surface, preventing anyone from recognizing the symbols. What the hell is this? It was a portal opener. Now it's just a rusty old box. Only the system can make the box work again. For a price, no shit. Catherine noticed the rusty old box in his hand. She used to play with that box when she was little. Her grandfather bought the item in an auction in our continent. He believed it held some heaven-defying secrets, yet after trying to unlock its secret for decades, he realized the box was nothing but just a metal box. Portal opener, huh? So can I open portals anywhere using this? This portal opener can open a portal to only one place. After fixing the place, the host will be unable to change the portal location. A smile emerged on his face. How much for repairing this? 15,000 badass points. He didn't order the system to repair the box at this moment. He turned back to see the princess staring at him. Do you know what this is, Princess Catherine? I'm not your personal scholar, Catherine coldly replied. Gaia clenched her fist as she felt like knocking Catherine's teeth out of her mouth. I'll take this. Only Gaia noticed the glint of excitement in his eyes. Except for Michael, no one had an idea he was holding a power that could change the world forever. Where does the host want the box to open a portal? The system sounded rather curious. Nether Realm. Chapter 4:16, Army of Undead. 2-inch Lord Dalar, the Dark Lord, and the Dark Queen are back inside Dalar's workshop. Jonah informed Dalar about the arrival of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. The workshop was a mess because after killing the last alpha undead they had, Dalar went crazy as he started to punch everything he could in the room. Jonah could not stop him as he barely survived the crazy orc. Jonah could still vividly see the orc running around crazy. He kept screaming, "I was so close." Sigh, Dalar sighed. The orc was looking at the severed head on the table. Among all the things in the room, that head was the only thing that survived Dalar's wrath. Lord Dalar, out of nowhere, Azazel materialized in the room just a couple of inches away from Jonah. Eek! Jonah jumped in shock. He almost had a heart attack. Azazel's mouth opened, but when he saw the mess, he closed his mouth. He looked around for a couple of seconds before speaking again. "Lord Dalar, you've been summoned by Lord Lucifer and the Dark Queen." Azazel then turned his gaze towards Jonah, who looked pale as he was terrified of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. "You're too, Lord Jonah." Azazel flew through the walls as though there were no walls in the room. A few seconds after Azazel left the room, Jonah talked. "Lord Dalar, we shouldn't keep them waiting. Let's go." Dalar sighed again. "You're right." Both of them walked out of the room. Just before shutting the door closed, Dalar took one last look at the mess. The throne hall of the mansion was not very brightly lit. The chandeliers produced just enough light to make everything visible, and at the same time, it gave a gloomy feeling to the throne hall. After all, he was the Dark Lord and he shouldn't be sitting in a bright place. Instead of one throne as before, Dalar saw two thrones on the elevated platform where he saw the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen waiting for them. Azazel remained beside the Dark Lord on the elevated platform. Dalar and Jonah couldn't help thinking Azazel informed the Dark Lord and Dark Queen about the mess. They didn't know about the spy cam in their workshop. Azazel witnessed everything from the surveillance room and just pretended to be seeing the mess for the first time. Dark Lord Lucifer, Dark Queen, Jonah and Dalar knelt on the floor obediently. "Rise." Dark Queen's cold voice echoed through the hall. "How is your experiment going on, Dalar?" His voice sounded calm. If he was mad about the mess they made, he sure didn't show it in his voice. "Dark Lord, Dalar stuttered. He tried to tell the Dark Lord about his failure when Jonah surprisingly intervened. "We found out some valuable information about the Alpha Undead." "Dark Lord, do tell," Michael asked. He was amused by Jonah's sudden courage. Whenever he came to the mansion, Jonah purposely hid himself pretending to be cultivating. Since Michael had no use for Jonah other than being an apprentice to Dalar, he didn't talk much with Jonah. Dalar growled after Jonah intervened. The orc hated the human for trying to help him. The last thing Dalar wanted was a human to help him in a situation such as this. It was embarrassing. Teaching him a few things because he was helpful was another thing, but getting saved by him was not cool as far as Dalar was concerned. The Alpha Undeads, they are extremely sensitive to sunlight or any bright light. By focusing a light source on them, the connection they have with the other undeads could be severed and be killed easily. This wasn't a shocking reveal per se, as Michael already knew about the alpha undead's vulnerability to sunlight. When he fought them, they always moved under the shade of the trees. The stormy clouds at that time prevented the sunlight from completely falling on the alphas. Michael was expecting the results of Dalar's other experiment. The experiment of controlling the alphas. The last time when Michael asked the system about controlling the alphas, the system informed him that its level was too low. Since he upgraded the system, he decided to try again. Jonah, what you two apparently found is completely useless. Without an army of undead to control, the alphas are easy prey. Especially for the cultivators. They could kill them with a single spell. In other words, these two were killing the alphas I captured for nothing. Dark Queen's cold words almost made Jonah wet himself. Fortunately, the Dark Lord squeezed her hand to calm her down. I was so close, Dark Lord. I just need a little more time. I was able to feel the connection before the head exploded, Dalar said. He didn't want to hide behind Jonah anymore. If push came to shove, he would have to use the item he got from his father. Nonetheless, he doubted the Dark Lord would kill him just because he failed to achieve a breakthrough in his experiment. Azazel, bring them here. Dalar and Jonah looked at the butler disappear around the corner with confused faces. Several minutes later, Azazel appeared in the hall again. As Azazel approached the Dark Lord and Dark Queen, hovering in the air, there were two figures dragging themselves behind Azazel. The smell of rotten eggs filled the hall. Jonah and Dalar almost got used to the smell as they immediately recognized the two figures behind Azazel. Alphas, Dalar mumbled under his breath. One of the alpha was a ripped man while the other was a woman with ample breasts. Both of them were naked, of course. Their skin was pale with several bite marks around their chests. Their shoulder-length hair was greasy and messy. With their dead fish eyes, they stared at Dalar. He was stunned to see the obedience of the alphas. He wondered how the heck the Dark Lord controlled them. Only Michael knew it wasn't controlling but keeping the alphas in a state of dizziness by injecting a potent potion into their brain. Do what you did in your workshop, Dalar nodded. He had the feeling that the Dark Lord might hold the final key to controlling the alphas. Taking the book Netherals from his space ring, Dalar drew some symbols in the air. Jonah backed away to avoid getting blasted or worse, getting killed. The tattered leather cover of the book lit up as the bright blue symbols began to appear in the air. Soon, the symbols began to rate, creating a sphere of blue light. Speckles of blue light separated themselves from the sphere and floated towards the male alpha. Then, the blue light slowly protruded into its mind. System, are you seeing this? Michael asked the system. His X-ray vision enabled him to see the energy spectrum between Dalar and the alphas. The spectrum of energy was very similar to the energy waves between Michael and his drones. Unlike the energy waves that appear when Michael establishes a connection with a drone, the energy waves between Dalar and the alphas were violent and much more powerful. Yes. The signal waves are too powerful and unstable. It will harm the undead and in time, it will harm Dalar. Since the host upgraded the system, you can buy a connector to control the alphas. It will cost you only 10,000 badass points. One connector will let you control 2 alphas and Dalar control 4 alphas, so the extra 2 because of the Book of Netherals. Michael pondered. Okay, I will take it. How many? 2. The system asked. No, only 1. It's for Dalar. I don't need to control the alphas, at least not yet. That's why I have Dalar. Warning. Dalar is still not a subordinate. The system strongly advised against giving Dalar the connector. His vision became red as the system warning screen appeared in front of him. He has a spy cam on him, remember? If he tries to mess with me, the spider will inject potent poison into him. Plus, if he wants to escape, he needs to go through the forest filled with deadly fear toxin. What about teleportation? He has a tracker on him which I bought from you. what don't you want to control the alphas? The system continued to ask him questions. It was not completely concerned about Michael's safety. Rather, it wanted to sell 2 connectors. First, I'm going to Maze-Roth. Second, the more things I control, the more the strain on my brain. By controlling Dalar, I can control the alphas. By controlling alphas, I will control the undead army. When Michael was trying to control countless spycam with his mind, the system warned him about the drawbacks of controlling too many things with his brain. Hence, he connected the feeds to the mirrors and gave control of all the spycams and drones to Azazel while he only established connections with them when needed. This way, his brain had way less strain. Third, I have 40,000 badass points remaining. I need to have as much points as I can when I go to Maze-Roth. The system went silent for a couple of moments, one connector coming up. The connector was a 3-inch long 2-inch wide paper-thin card with countless micro symbols etched into it. It vaguely resembled the chip in his forearm which connected the APD with his body. Whenever he needs a potion, he just needs to establish a connection with the APD and it would inject the potion into his bloodstream. Alternatively, the APD could also automatically inject potions into his body in case he lost consciousness and needed a healing potion, for instance. Stop. When Michael closed the system interface, the time slowing down effect disappeared as he ordered Dalar to stop before he killed the alpha. Dalar quickly stopped the ritual. In a blink of an eye, the Dark Lord appeared in front of him. For a moment, Dalar thought he was going to die. Instead, the Dark Lord just gently slapped the back of his neck. He suddenly felt a bolt of electricity running through his spine. Dalar touched the back of his neck and felt something on his neck. Now perform the ritual. Dalar was confused, but he obeyed the order given to him. As before, the ritual started with a blue sphere and everything continued perfectly. A few minutes after, Jonah stepped aside because Dalar reached the point where the alpha's head would explode. However, that did not happen. The blue sphere gradually disappeared as the cold dead eyes of the alpha shone in red. I can feel the connection, Dalar mumbled. Chapter 4:17, Army of Undead. Dalar was flabbergasted. His entire body shivered, looking at the alpha. It was not a connection that enabled Dalar to control the alpha like a robot. Rather, the connection enabled Dalar to give telepathic orders to the alpha. With the alpha's limited intelligence, it would do its absolute best to complete the order. That's how you do it. Michael gave a pat on Dalar's back. He was more excited than Dalar. Come, we have an army to summon, said Michael calmly. Gaia came to stand at his side with the others. A bright light flashed across the hall the next moment and everyone disappeared from the hall except Azazel. The sudden flash of light made Jonah tightly shut his eyes. When he opened them again, he was standing in a familiar place. From one gloomy place to another. The empty hall was dimly lit with torches. The walls and the floor was made of marble which reflected the light produced by the torches and lit the place orange. The crypt was empty since all the pirates were teleported back to Cory's Island where they joined Maxina's crew. The crew along with Gibson were working on fixing the old Bertha. After they found out her keel was broken in the middle, they suggested he let the ship go as there was no way to fix the keel. What was the point of having a system if he couldn't find a fix to a simple thing such as fixing the keel? The system sold him something that looked like white clay and instructed him to apply the clay to the heel. Since he had minions to do that, he gave the clay to them. Surprisingly for the crew, when they applied the clay, it mended the broken heel, healing old Bertha. Dalar had no idea about this place. It was spacious enough to fit hundreds of people. Dalar wondered why he brought them to this empty place. You can control 4 alphas. When you achieve proficiency in controlling them, I will grant you the ability to control more alphas. Granted, controlling more alphas would take a toll on the brain. Hence, Michael gave the task to Dalar on top of Dalar's ability to control more alphas at the same time than him because of the Book of Netherals. However, the limit was not 4. As a core formation cultivator, Dalar would be able to control at least 10 alphas. According to Jonah's research, one alpha could control 80 undead. Alpha undeads were extremely rare. They were created by the energy signals leaked from the Hydra egg. Since the egg was no longer existing, no alphas would be created on the island. Since Michael reached the star 4 inverter lever, he could build complicated devices. One of the devices he could build was a signal creator which would replicate the signals. He would have built the device if it wasn't for Vidora being too weak. The device required Vidora to be at least core formation level, so the signals produced by Vidora would be powerful enough to create alpha undeads. Of course, it was not that easy as it had several complications. For the time being, Michael decided to capture the remaining alpha undeads on the island and let Dalar control them. By controlling the alphas, he could control the undeads outside the crypt as well as the undeads of the nether realm. 800 undeads, not enough, Michael thought. Did you buy the thing I asked you? Michael then turned his gaze towards Gaia. Before he set up the portal opener and summoned undeads from the nether realm, he needed to find a way to control them to his will after they crossed the portal. Unruly mindless creatures were no use to him. At the moment Dalar could summon 50 undeads from the nether realm and control 150 undeads at once. Since controlling alphas would take a toll on his brain, he would not be able to control alphas and the undeads at the same time. Hence, Michael came up with a new plan. Gaia flicked her wrist as a bronze collar appeared in her hand. The collar was big enough to put around a human neck and looked plain without any fancy runes or inscriptions. Taking the collar from her hand, he walked several steps away from them. Then, after a flick of his wrist, a large heavy table and a long chair appeared for him to sit and work. He took out a bright orb and placed it on the table for light. While Dalar and Jonah were familiarizing themselves with Dalar's ability to control the alphas, Michael worked in silence. "What's the plan?" she whispered after coming to his side. "Why did you want me to buy a slave collar?" "To control the undeads who are going to walk out of the portal we are about to open." When Michael first told her that the rusty old box could open up a portal to another realm, she couldn't believe it. But she soon came to agree with him as she had seen him perform so many miracles. The moment he said undead army, she was on board with his plan. There was no loyalty or wage problem with an undead army. Therefore, maintaining an undead army was a breeze if they could control them. "How are you going to do that?" "Explain it to me." She leaned closer to his face, although she had a feeling that whatever he was going to say, she wouldn't understand it completely. "I will simplify things for you," said Michael, not wanting to make her feel stupid. "That chip I placed in Dalar's neck radiates an energy wave that would control the alpha. The slave collar works also has the same underlying principle. It creates an energy wave and that energy waves control a person's very soul. The slave master establishes a connection with the slave collar and through that connection, the slave master controls the slave. If the slave shows any disobedience, he or she just has to will the collar to send a bolt of energy wave into the slave's body which targets the soul." He paused for a moment to breathe and continued, "Since the netherals have no soul, I can modify the collar to redirect the energy wave to the undead brain, but a slave master could control 40 slaves at best. How are you planning to control the hundreds of netherals outside and the ones we are going to summon through the portal?" asked Gaia. "Controlling a brain takes way less toll on the slave master's mind than controlling the very soul. If my calculations are correct, a core formation cultivator could control 300 undeads after I modified the collars." Gaia raised her brows after doing the math in her brain. "Let's say we both control 400 undeads each, that's 800 undeads. What about Dalar? He could control 10 alphas and each of them could control 80 undeads, then that's another 800. 1,600 undeads. The ones outside had no cultivation power. So still not a powerful army purse." Gaia was right. If all the 1,600 undeads had body strengthening level 7 cultivation, they would have been quite a power to reckon with. Since it was not the case, dominating the cultivation continents using this army was nothing but a dream. I'm working on a way to make the undead outside get cultivation power. As for the undeads in Netherrealm, we need to find suitable candidates to control the undead aside from you, me, and Maxine. If we are going to build an army, we need loyal generals. We already have two. Arius brothers. Michael reminded Gaia about Arius brothers who were getting healed rapidly inside the tubes. We will summon the undead from the Netherrealm here. That way they won't be as strong as they are in the Netherrealm. Until we come back from Mazeroth, let Dalar summon the undeads and roam around the island. This island suits better to build an undead army. Since they already have undeads, no one would find out about our summonings, like hiding a tree in a forest. I like the way your brains work. Gaia would have kissed him so deep if it wasn't for Jonah and Dalar in the hole. It's not a perfect plan, but it'll work for now. Hopefully, we will have an army of the undead by the time we return from Mazeroth. As he finished talking, the bronze collar lit up for a few seconds before returning to its normal dull self. Done? Whoa, you're done. Gaia was surprised. He was just placing some weird objects on the collar and connecting them with a thin wire. She couldn't understand what was happening between the objects or how they worked together to modify the slave collar. Can you grab me an undead from outside? Asked Michael, preparing to test the collar. Before I go, I have questions. What? Why can't you use this collar to control the alpha? Michael just smiled behind the mask. It was actually a good question that he himself asked the system for an answer. The energy waves created by the slave collar are too weak. If anyone tried to enslave an alpha, they will be killed in a few seconds. She still had a few questions, but before she could ask them all, she flew high towards the roof to go outside. Michael waited patiently for Gaia to return. He was calm as he knew the collar would work and the undead would be controlled. Orders up. One freshly captured undead, a pale undead, landed on Michael's feet. The putrid smell was overwhelming to Jonah and Dalar. They momentarily stopped studying the alphas and turned their gazes towards the Dark Lord. Michael placed the collar around the undead before the undead could take a bite at his leg. The moment the bronze collar touched the undead, Michael felt a connection. It was like another arm. He could feel the undead. A tiny crystal stone mine from Stormvale Castle was placed inside the collar. It sent a bolt of energy wave to the undead's brain, making it obedient in a flash. His power made subduing and enslaving the undead easier than he imagined. The undead slowly stood up. This time, it didn't try to leap towards Michael. It growled but remained obedient. Well, I need to reduce the power of the collar. Chapter 4:18, Portal open to the Netherrealm. The collar was working perfectly, too perfectly. At the moment, they were like robots waiting for Michael to control them. That meant their each and every moment could be controlled by Michael. It was not efficient when he had thousands of undeads, as he would not be able to control each and every one. He wanted them like mindless war machines. If he instructed them to attack, they should be able to attack their target without him controlling their movements. This way, whoever controls the collar would have less stress on their brain. Grr, the undead growled as Michael approached the undead. Jonah and Dalar were staring at the undead without batting an eye. Dalar started to sweat inside his long coat. If Lucifer was able to control the undeads without him, his usefulness to Lucifer would diminish greatly. Since the system could not make Dalar his subordinate for some reason, Michael always handled Dalar with caution. He wanted to replace Dalar if Dalar tried anything weird. He almost replaced Dalar with the portal opener. Before the portal opener, Dalar was the only one who could open a portal to summon the Netherals, but this portal was one way. Only Netherals could walk through the portal, no one could enter the Netherrealm. Now Michael could open the portal to the Netherrealm and capture as many Netherals as he wanted. In addition, he could farm experience points inside the Netherrealm as well as gather rare herbs for his herbal garden. What are you doing? Asked Gaia, looking at him tinkering with the bronze collar around the undead's neck. Give me a minute. Using runes to control the Netherals would be much easier. Considering he was not a rune master, he had to take the long route by placing several components he bought from the system and the stores in this world into the collar. After tinkering with the collar for a few more minutes, Michael felt the control over the undead had been greatly reduced. But the undead was still in his control. Attack that wall. His order sounded weird, but the undead was already running toward the wall he pointed. Reaching the wall, the undead began to attack the wall violently. It punched, scratched, slapped, and even bit the wall. That's how you make an undead army. Michael cracked his neck. The words that came out of his mouth were drenched in pride. With an undead army, the bloodshed would be greatly reduced. Also, there wouldn't be major loyalty issues. Maintaining an undead army cost fewer resources, and compared to the human army, the undead army was several times deadlier. Unlike an army made of humans, the undead army would fight till the end, as they would not feel any emotions or pain. Jonah, Dalar, Michael called the both of them. They left the alpha undeads to come to him. With a flick of his wrist, Michael retrieved the portal opener from his space ring. He threw the portal opener into the middle of the hall and closed his eyes. System, activate the portal, establishing connection with the portal opener. Please select a target location. Warning, the host will not be able to change the target location afterward. Nether realm, locking coordinates, manipulating the space between the southern continent and the nether realm. The portal opener on the ground began to vibrate as the symbols glowed brighter and brighter with the seconds passing by. They could feel the distortion of space around them. Boom! A muffled booming sound echoed through the hall as the portal to the nether realm finally opened. Dalar was stunned, and so was Jonah and Gaia. On the other side of the portal, they saw a land filled with foreign vegetation. Rainbow-colored trees, gigantic sunflowers, miniature trees, as well as netherals. The netherals looked in the direction of the portal as though they had detected the portal open. However, after a few seconds, they went back to roaming around aimlessly. Jonah, Dalar, your task is to summon as many netherals as you can and put this collar around their neck. You will get more collars before tomorrow night. Take this. This will help you knock out the netherals when they come out of the portal. Michael flicked his wrist as several crates appeared beside the portal. Maxine will bring you all your necessities. Jonah and Dalar had no choice but to accept. He then retrieved a drone from his space ring before sending it flying into the portal. Azazel, I have sent a drone into the nether realm. Monitor the feed carefully and contact me if anything interesting happened. After giving an order to his trusty demon butler, Michael and Gaia activated the runic teleportation to leave the crypt, leaving Jonah and Dalar behind. 2 days later, Michael and Gaia were preparing to attend the party in Hades. Gaia looked stunning in her new clothes. Her glistening white ornate dress flew from top to bottom and had a square neckline, which gracefully revealed the luxurious dress worn below it. The delectable corset of her dress covered her stomach, where the continuous flow was broken up by a simple cloth band worn quite high around her waist. Below the cloth band, the dress opened up to the left and revealed the dress below. The front of the top dress easily reached the ground in the front. The back continued to flow a good length behind her and ended in a broad rectangle. Her sleeves were incredibly long and incredibly wide. Their flow was broken up just above the elbow, where they changed color from pearl white to a tinge of silver, and where they were divided by thick, simple bands. These were the same fabric and color used to outline the edges of the dress. When she adjusted her loose hair, Michael was staggered by beauty. He wore a Victorian Gothic-style jacket that reached his knees. The jacket was ornate with silver etchings. His black trousers perfectly complemented his black jacket. Adjusting the edge of his sleeves one last time, he walked towards Gaia. He hugged her from behind and kissed the back of her neck passionately. He, it tickles Michael, she giggled. You smell good. Michael kissed her cheek. It's the jasmine drops Olivia gave me. Speaking of Olivia, is she still in seclusion? According to Claire, Olivia was trying to break through to the core formation level 9, and she had been in seclusion ever since Gaia left for the Fire Realm. After the championships tournament, Michael presented her with enough pills and potions to successfully reach the core formation level 9. He planned to make her his subordinate when she came out of the seclusion. Knock. 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 Someone gently knocked on the door thrice. Since the two of them finished getting ready, they stepped toward the door. When they opened the door, Claire was standing outside in amazement. "Wow, you two are going to steal the show." Claire put her hand around Gaia's hand and led them towards the outside. When they reached outside, almost the entire Sunrise sect was there to cheer for them. Michael felt like he was a celebrity on the red carpet. He waved his hand at the disciples as their thunderous cheers got louder. Ricky was waiting in the carriage. Ladies first, Michael opened the door for Claire and Gaia. He helped both of them get into the carriage by holding their hands as a gentleman should. "Did you give the package to him?" he asked Ricky. "Yes, Master Ghost." "He gave you this." Ricky handed over a tiny piece of paper. He opened the paper to see two words written inside. "Debt settled." He put the paper into his space ring just in case. In addition to the portal opener, Gaia and Michael took another item from the treasury. It was the item Lord Information asked Michael to get. The item was a bronze plate with several runes on it. Michael scanned the bronze plate. According to the system, it was a piece of an artifact, and without two more pieces, the system was unable to tell Michael about the function of the artifact. Although Michael was curious, he handed over the item to Lord Information via Ricky. With this, he had returned the favor to Lord Information for giving the information of who put the bounty on his head before the tournament. Also, Michael asked all his minions to call him Master Ghost instead of Your Majesty outside Bradford. There was no reason for this except the latter made him feel somewhat older. Since all the pathways were paved, the carriage ride was so smooth. It used to take 2 hours to reach the river town by carriage due to the untended path, but now, it would only take them an hour. "When are you going to Mazeroth, Ghost?" "Tomorrow morning." "Aw, your finance gonna miss you." Claire playfully nudged Gaia's elbow. "I am going into seclusion," lied Gaia as Claire was taken aback by surprise. "Again? Don't tell me you're about to reach the core strengthening stage." Gaia shook her head. "How can I? I'm not a monster like him. I feel like I will reach level 3 if I spend another month or 2 in seclusion." Gaia lied again because she did not want Claire to get more suspicious than she actually was. At this moment, he did not know he was about to meet his archenemy, to be more specific, Lucifer's archenemy, the future Supreme Guardian Noah. Somewhere else in Azair, someone had already sent assassins to crash Michael's special day. Hi my wonderful readers, major, or minor, turns of events coming up. New enemies, a new realm and a new version of Michael. The next tournament arc will be a fun-filled wild ride with lots of actions and background story. So get ready. Also, Hunter Sterling Blade in another universe is about to get his own system. Dictator with a badass system. Fear not, the both systems are not the same. Chapter 419, Engagement Party at Hades. The vibrancy of the river town peaked when they heard Ghost was planning to visit Hades. This was his first visit to the river town as their king. The people had decorated the entire town with lanterns, ornaments, dancing dragons that resembled nightmare, and signboards. Regardless, it was the morning, the people of the river town fired countless fireworks into the sky. Their clothes were contrary to the colorful decorations. Almost all the people in the river town were dressed in black. They did not know the purpose of his visit. Nonetheless, they were delighted to welcome their king. Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Long live the king! Long live the king! Long live the king! Long live the king! Their thunderous chants echoed through the river town as the carriage of Ghost entered the town. The carriage slowly moved towards the Hades where the waitresses and waiters were waiting to welcome Michael. Today, Hades was closed. Only the invited guests could enter Hades. The guest had already arrived at Hades and they were waiting for Ghost to make his appearance. Gloria, the manager of Hades, was waiting outside with a wide grin on her face. No one would tell she was a commoner by looking at her. From her clothes to her attitude, everything changed after joining Hades. Even the waiters and waitresses looked stylish and smart in black coats, white shirts, and bows. Inside the carriage, Michael had a grin on his face. The notification sound of getting badass points sounded louder and louder. He almost earned 20,000 badass points just by reaching the river town. It seems our son has come. Meanwhile, inside the Hades, Ethan put the orange juice in his hand and whispered to Diana. The loud noise outside made it obvious. When Diana saw the invitation from Ghost, she was excited beyond words. She cancelled all the events she had to attend and made time to come to the river town. Ethan was equally excited to see his son regardless of what happened in the tournament. Despite everything that happened, everyone got what they wanted. Andrews was about to be engaged to Princess Catherine, Ghost got his own kingdom, and the king got to save his daughter. Excuse me, while Diana was waiting for her son, she heard a sweet childish voice from behind. She turned back to see a cute little girl wearing a glistening blue dress. She carried a green rose in her hand. The little girl's round eyes and her two pigtails made her extremely cute. Ethan couldn't resist the girl's cuteness. Unlike Diana, he didn't know the girl. Cindy looked surprised when Diana called her by her name. My lady, you dropped this. Cindy held out the green rose for Diana to take. Ethan couldn't resist the little girl anymore as he ruffled her head. Diane, you know this cutie pie? She nodded. She's the daughter of Lady Raylene, the 5-star chef, and the little sister of Brother Ghost, Sister Elia, and Sister Claire. Cindy puffed out her chest and said, basking everyone around her with her cuteness. Many who noticed Cindy couldn't help sighing. They wanted to squeeze this little girl. Green rose, extremely rare. Another mature voice sounded as Diana looked in the direction of the door to see Peyton approaching them with a calm smile on her face. Guardian Peyton, regardless of Diana's hate towards the Guardians, she greeted Peyton with a nod and a smile. Ethan also smiled at Peyton, hiding the hatred in his heart. Peyton knelt in front of Cindy and took the green rose from her hand. She adjusted her spectacles. Very rare indeed. Sister, does this belong to you? Cindy asked politely. No, little one, but I will hand this over to the owner. Deal? Cindy looked at Peyton for a few seconds before shaking Peyton's hand with her tiny hand. After Cindy disappeared back into the kitchen to join her mother, Peyton took the seat at Diana's table. Diana did not hate Peyton as she was the best friend of Noah's girlfriend, Sonali. Plus, Diana or Ethan had no reason to hate Peyton except for the fact she's a guardian. They couldn't hate all the guardians because their son was a guardian himself. Peyton took in the atmosphere of Hades for a few seconds in silence. When her colleagues said she must visit Hades at least once just for the view, she thought they were overselling it. But after seeing the majestic view of the flowing river outside, the lighting inside the restaurant, and the decor of the place, she was truly amazed. Although Hades was just recently opened, booking a table was a hassle, even for a guardian. The nobles spent thousands of gold coins just to get a table for themselves and taste the cooking of Raylene. Even the people of royal families were in line to get a table. Peyton also noticed all the prominent figures enjoying the drinks. There were elders of the Kane family, representatives of the Rainshade Merchant Guild, as well as the elders of the Sunrise sect. Not all the tables were occupied, as it seemed like Ghost only invited a handful of people to the party. Peyton was curious to see what the reason for his invitation was. The coronation ceremony was meant to be held after 6 months. As Peyton was looking around, everyone's gaze fell on the main door. They saw Ghost and Elia enter Hades. Both of them looked dashing, especially Gaia. Gloria took the wine glass from the table nearby and tapped the glass with a spoon. The atmosphere quickly became silent. Everyone, first of all, thank you for accepting my invitation on such short notice. Please enjoy the meals first, I have an important announcement to make afterward. It will be worth the wait, ladies and gentlemen. Michael did not beat around the bush. The people before him were extremely busy and there was no need for him to use flowery words. Instead, he knew they would like a more direct approach. Quickly the waiters and waitresses started their work. They moved around the tables taking orders like water flowing downstream, flawlessly. Their coordination and speed were truly magnificent and efficient. Somehow the first faces that drew his attention were Diana and Ethan. On his way to Diana and Ethan, Michael greeted everyone and spent a couple of minutes talking to them as a courtesy. Claire joined the elders at their table, leaving Michael and Gaia to attend to the rest of the guests. When he reached Diana's table, he was greeted by her and her husband with wide grins on their faces. Lady Diana and Lord Ethan. Michael shook Ethan's hand and then Diana's hand. He then greeted Peyton with a smile. Miss Peyton. He shook her hand. Gaia then shook everyone's hand and took her seat beside Ghost. She wondered why out of all seats he decided to sit with the Winstons and a guardian. I hope you don't mind me sitting here, Lord Ethan, Michael said. Their table was meant for a family of 12 to sit, so they had enough seats to go around. Ethan shook his head, chuckling. Hey, it's your party and restaurant. You can sit anywhere you want, Your Majesty. Oh please, call me Ghost. I'm still not a king and I prefer my friends address me by my name, Lord Ethan. Ladies and gentlemen. As they were talking, Gloria herself came to take the order, the specials Gloria. Gaia ordered for them before they could even open the menu. The specials was a code word for bring everything on the menu for today. Trust me, you have to try them. Gaia winked at them. Something about Elia rubbed Diana in the wrong way. According to Diana's spies, Elia was an orphan who grew up with Ghost. But the aura the girl radiated was not of an orphan. Diana met countless orphans and Elia was not one of them. Diana noticed the way Elia handled the guests. A commoner girl would have at least felt a little nervous facing powerful people such as the elders of the Kane family. However, Diana saw no signs of nervousness in her attitude. As Diana was watching Elia, her heart skipped a beat when she noticed the rings on her finger and the ring on Ghost's finger. The last time Diana saw her son, he did not have the ring. She started to connect the dots. He's engaged, Diana came to the conclusion in her mind. A burst of joy exploded in her heart along with a tinge of sadness. She would have celebrated the day as a festival, but because of the circumstances, she couldn't do so. Still, Diana wanted to leap at them and hug them both so tight. Meanwhile, in the forest surrounding the river town, a group of figures dressed in black clothes was looking at the Hades from the shadows. They covered their bodies from head to toes. They hid in the darkness of the forest. There were at least 50 people in the group and they all had bows in their hands. Team Hawk is in place, one of the black-clothed figures among the group spoke. He didn't seem to speak to the others but to a red stone in his hand. Team Eagle is approaching the target site. Let loose on our signal. A thick voice came from the stone as the black-clothed figure nodded. Target in sight. Another black-clothed figure spoke looking at the Hades. The green roses are in place. Another voice came out of the stone. Wait for the target to reach the marked location. The black-clothed figure who had the red stone in his hand spoke. Inside Hades, everything was going without a mishap. No one had any idea about the lurkers around them. Even Michael did not sense the figures in the forest as they were far away from the range of environmental scanning. Father, Mother, Michael and Gaia stood opposite Diana and Ethan. At that moment, Michael heard a voice from behind, a familiar voice. Without even turning back, he could tell who just entered Hades. Noah Winston. Chapter 420. Ninjas crashed the celebration. Noah, who came with Alicia and Zanali, took the seat beside his mother and father. Gaia clenched her fist as the smile on her face disappeared instantly when she saw Zanali. Under the table, Michael squeezed Gaia's hand to calm her down and remind her where they were. Alicia was wearing a sparkling golden gown while Zanali wore a ruby red gown with loose full sleeves. Their beauty caught everyone's attention. In the middle of the two beauties, Noah remained calm as serene water. He looked contrary to Michael wearing pure white robes. Diana's heart warmed seeing her two sons at the same place despite both Noah and Michael not wanting each other's company. Before they were born, Skyhall told her that the twins were destined to battle each other for the fate of the world. One would fight for blood and chaos while the other would fight for peace. Still, Diana invited Noah to the party just to start building the bridge between them and Ghost. Deep down, Noah and Michael didn't hate each other. Unlike Noah, Michael knew about Noah's secret. As far as Michael was concerned, Noah and the rest of the world were being manipulated by a higher power, the Guardians. Have you two met each other before? Ethan asked, looking at them. Gaia's eyes were locked onto Zenali. For Zenali on the other hand, a commoner girl no matter who she dates didn't earn her attention. Hence, Zenali did not even take a second glance at Gaia. Noah and Michael remained silent for a few moments. Diana was afraid that Noah would be mad at Michael for nearly killing Andrews during the tournament. Not like this, Noah calmly answered, just like Michael. Noah too squeezed Alicia's hand under the table to calm her down. Ghost spared Peter his life but made his life a living hell by revealing Peter's vigilante life. In addition to that, he literally wiped the floor with Peter. The mental trauma Peter suffered affected Alicia's entire family. The Guardian started investigating Peter and with the evidence Ghost provided, it was only a matter of time before Peter received a sentence from the guild. Compared to Michael, Noah was a good guy as he did not reveal Gaia's identity even though Ghost almost destroyed Alicia's family and killed his cousin. You know, unfortunate things happen in life. We should forgive and move on, Ethan quickly said to ease things up. However, to everyone's surprise, Noah smiled. If you're talking about what happened to Andrews, I don't blame Ghost. Even Michael was surprised to hear Noah. He knew Noah was a guy who could be branded as a righteous goody two-shoes. Still, he didn't expect this answer from Noah. Andrews knew what he was getting into. I am glad everything worked out for everyone, Noah signaled one of the waitresses to fill their cups. The waitress came running to them with an expensive bottle of wine. She filled all their cups except for Michael and Guy. Everyone at the table looked at the two of them with a bewildered face. We don't drink, Diana nodded approvingly while Ethan looked just stunned. Me too, Michael nodded at Noah with a smile. Noah really seemed like he didn't hold any grudge against Michael for beating the crap out of Andrews or destroying Peter. Of course, Noah still hated Ghost for using his talents to get richer instead of helping people. In Noah's mind, Ghost was a first-class self-centered person who would lift a finger if there is no profit for him. Diana was glad to hear Noah and felt quite proud of her son. Everything was going better than they expected. The aroma from the kitchen started to kindle their appetite. Noah and Michael could even hear some stomachs growling. They couldn't blame them as whatever Raylene was making smelled so good. Soon the waitresses and waiters arrived carrying plates from the kitchen. Gloria and two other waiters came to Michael's table with so many delicious dishes. They neatly lined the dishes on the round table for everyone to easily reach them. Creamy squash risotto with toasted pepitas, chilled marinated pork with Brussels sprouts, clam toast with pancetta, Filipino-style meatloaf, grilled garlic, and black pepper shrimp, grilled kingfish with creamed corn, olive oil confit chicken with cipollini onions, pork chops with celery and almond salad were just a few dishes Gloria and the two waiters could carry at once. The rest of the dishes were still on the kitchen table waiting to be picked up. My lords and my ladies, please enjoy your meals. After serving Michael, Gloria tapped the glass in her hands and announced with a gentle smile. Soon after she announced, everyone dug into the dishes in front of them. The hall was filled with the sound of forks and knives hitting the dishes and chewing. The feast continued without any problems. The desserts arrived right after everyone finished their main courses. At Michael's table, everyone was enjoying their meals in silence. Occasionally Diana tried to start a conversation that would involve both Noah and Ghost. However, when one answered, the other remained silent. So there was no conversation between Noah and Ghost as Diana wanted it to be. The desserts disappeared faster than the main courses. When everyone licked the plates and cups clean, they all looked at Ghost for the reason for his invitation. "The floor is yours, Ghost." Ethan patted Michael on the shoulder as he stood up to talk. "Who else still has some space in the stomach for more desserts?" Michael joked. All the guests let out a chuckle. "I have 2 announcements to make." 2 life-changing announcements. Michael looked at Gaia and smiled before continuing. "Ladies and gentlemen, I was invited to join Mazroth." The entire hall went silent after he announced. Gaia expected a few more sentences from his mouth, but he suddenly announced the thing without beating around the bush. The people were stunned, especially Diana. She felt a chill running through her spine. Her shock was not the good kind, it was utter fear and dread. Everyone's eyes were one Ghost, so they failed to notice the gloomy look on Diana's face. Just as when Noah was about to turn to look at his mother, all of a sudden, Ghost stopped talking. The very next moment, the smile on Noah and Ghost's faces vanished. The 2 of them had sensed the danger before anyone else. Chill. Chill. 2 arrows pierced through the glass walls out of nowhere. In a blink of an eye, Michael and Noah both reached out to their parents. Noah caught the arrow that was aimed at his mother and Ghost grabbed the arrow that was aimed at Ethan. Chill. 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 It took a few moments for everyone to realize what just happened. Thanks to Michael and Noah's reflex, they grabbed the arrow mid-air before they could hit Diana and Ethan. "Get down!" Peyton screamed as loud as she could after seeing the arrows. Chill. 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 The glass walls around them shattered before anyone could react to Peyton's shout. Gaia immediately kicked the table before them and used the table as a cover. Sunlight shield, earth protection. Metal bubble. Many quickly cast defense spells while the arrows were continuously getting forced at them from all directions. Noah waved his hand as a white translucent bubble covered everyone hiding behind the table. "Mom, Dad, stay here." Noah shouted, "Polch! Polch! Arg, Gur, Arg!" The blood splashed across Michael's table from the waiters who just got riddled by arrows. Lightning dash. He immediately cast the spell to save Gloria before she loses her life. The arrows were extremely fast. Even when he was using lightning dash, the arrows seemed to move relatively faster. He was too late, but not too late. An arrow stuck Gloria in the arm, but he was able to grab her and run into the kitchen area where they had no glass walls. When he entered the kitchen, he saw Raylene and Cindy backed into a corner by several figures in ninja robes. Under different circumstances, Michael would have thought of Earth when he saw the ninjas. "Master Ghost. Brother." Raylene was holding Cindy tight. Her face was pale of the terror around her. The kitchen floor was red with blood. All the helpers were slaughtered by the 2 ninjas. On the floor near Cindy, Daniel was holding his stomach as blood was spraying out of the wound. He looked pale with blood loss. Michael's killing intent exploded through the roof when he saw this. The ninjas were only at body strengthening stage level 10. It seemed like Daniel, who was a core formation level 1 cultivator, saved Cindy and Raylene and brought enough time. The ninjas were extremely quick. A few minutes ago, Michael did not sense any danger around him. In a split second, they appeared on his environmental scanning map. They slaughtered the helpers in a few blinks. Ring of fire. Michael only had to think as streams of fire rushed out of his hands as though his hands were flamethrowers. It was not a ring of fire but a straight line of lava flame aimed at the 2 ninjas near Raylene and Cindy. Lightning dash. Michael felt losing control to the third persona. It was like something screaming inside his head to let it out. This time, Michael had the upper hand thanks to the meditation and control over his anger. The ninjas were fast but not as fast as Michael. Before they could leap at him, he reached Raylene and Cindy. Go! Michael shouted as he willed the system to buy a teleportation scroll and teleport the three of them to his room in the Dark Forest mansion. In addition to the teleportation scroll, he also willed the system to knock them out unconscious. The bright light flashed across the kitchen and in the next second, Cindy, Raylene, and Daniel disappeared from their sight. The kitchen then became darker as he turned back. His eyes flickered in red. The ninjas who were surrounding him had no idea they just punched the ticket to hell. 15 body strengthening stage level 10 ninjas were about to face one pissed-off core strengthening stage warrior. Ghost was too mad to think about the reason for the ambush or who sent the ninjas. Chapter 421, Gruesome Massacre. Gruesome Massacre. Michael could hear the sound of battle outside. But more than the sound of spells, the sound of arrows shattering glass and utensils rolling on the ground could be heard louder. He was surrounded by 15 body strengthening stage level 10 cultivators. At the moment, they all looked like dead bodies to Michael because they would soon be. Chop him to pieces, one of the ninjas ordered the others as they dashed at him. Michael on the other hand did not unsheath his words or cast any spells. Instead, he grabbed the kitchen knives from the nearby table where the soup was boiling in the pan. The ninjas zigzagged towards him. Surprisingly, Michael did not hear them casting any spells. Michael couldn't care less how they managed to perform chantless spell casting. Some of the ninjas stayed behind and fired arrows made of black energy. Those ninjas who dashed at him swung their daggers at Michael. The responsive shield spell formed a transparent blue bubble around him. When the arrows hit the bubble, they just disappeared. In a blink of an eye, Michael grabbed the ninjas by their hands before they could cut him. Polch! 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 He stabbed both the ninjas in their chests violently. The blood kept splashing out of their bodies. Boom! He threw the two ninjas onto the others. The ninjas had lightning-quick reflexes, so they avoided the two dead ninjas. He did not stop at that as he grabbed the soup bowl and threw the bubbling hot soup onto the ninja dashing towards him. Ah! One unfortunate ninja's skin was completely burnt by the soup because the ninja did not have any defense spell cast on him like the rest of them. Ring of Fire, he raised both his hands at the ninja who was screaming in agony. Out of his hands, a scorching hot stream of fire came out. The fire burned the ninja into a pile of dust within a few seconds. Surprisingly, the ninjas did not back off. Instead, they dashed at him more furiously. Michael showed no mercy to them. He grabbed one ninja by his hand, slamming him onto the table where Raylene used to cut meats. This time the ninjas threw star-shaped shurikens at him. Countless shurikens glowing in crimson red flew towards him. Yet all of them burned to a crisp when they came to contact with the responsive shield. He grabbed the cleaver on the table as the ninja on the table squirmed frantically. 3 ninjas leaped at him to save the ninja on the table. Ignitia, holding the meat cleaver in one hand, sent bolts of lightning at the ninjas approaching him with the other. Zzzrshich. Zzzrshich. Arg! 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 The lightning bolts hit their target with deadly accuracy. The ninjas dropped dead to the ground and all of them had a hold right between their eyes. Ah! This time, an ear-piercing squeal came out from under the table. It was Gloria who witnessed Michael chopping the ninja on the table to pieces with the meat cleaver. She couldn't hold back her scream. In her life, she had never seen such a gruesome killing. Until now, she was looking at him killing the other ninjas and keeping her mouth shut. But when she saw him chopping the ninja into pieces, she couldn't hold back. The ninjas did not change their target. Even after seeing their friend getting chopped to death, they still rushed toward Michael without a sliver of fear for their lives in their eyes. Outside the kitchen, everyone was still pinned down by the rain of arrows. Somehow the arrows pierced all their defensive spells. Fortunately, the arrows were still weak against physical objects. Those who survived hid under the tables. They could not see where the arrows were coming from. Hence, they couldn't fight back. Boom. 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 All of a sudden, the ceiling above them exploded. Several figures jumped through the ceiling after the dust cleared. The crumbled pieces fell down from the ceiling, hit several waiters and opened up their heads. The figures who jumped through the roof looked different than the ninjas in the kitchen. These figures wore thin plate armor covering their chests, shoulders, and arms. Silver metal covered the rest of their bodies. Gaio looked over the table to see their faces. All of them wrapped white cloth around their head to hide their faces. Gaia counted at least 20 armored figures. She wasn't sure if they were humans or elves or demi-humans behind the cloth. I'm sick of this. Gaia was just about to leave the cover of the table when all the figures raised their hands up. The very next second, a gigantic chakra materialized above them. She expected the chakra to do something other than glowing brighter and brighter and rotate in the air. The chakra faded away into thin air after a few seconds. A faint vibrating sound was still ringing in their head. It took these ambushers only a couple of minutes to turn Hades into a ruin. At the moment, people were hiding under the tables for their lives. Many waiters and waitresses lay on the ground in their own pool of blood. Noah saved as many people as he could. Although Gaia hated Noah, if it wasn't for him, the casualties would have been much higher. I can't feel, suddenly Zanali mumbled, what's happening? Followed by Zanali, Peyton also looked horrified. I can't feel my arch energy, Peyton started to breathe heavily. Not only Peyton and Zanali but every single one of them except for Diana looked terrified. They tried to cast spells yet no matter how hard they tried, they could even cast a basic spell. However, Gaia could feel arch energy running through her veins just fine. She wanted to use this opportunity to end Zanali's life. It was obvious the chakra made them temporarily unable to use arch energy. Peyton read something about spells that would block arch energy flow in an area, making the place void of arch energy. However, she had never seen the spell before. It felt as though she was teleported to the southern continent where she would feel the same way as she's feeling at the moment, Pulch. Suddenly, one of the figures standing in the circle dropped to the ground. Everyone looked up and saw a spear made of glowing energy sticking out of the figure's leg. All the figures looked in the direction where the spear came flying to see Noah standing a couple of meters away from them with a sword in each hand. A glowing shield formed around him which prevented the arrows from piercing through his body. Gaia was not going to let Noah be the savior of them and steal the show. Besides, she knew about Michael's problem. She wanted to rush to the kitchen and help Michael before he lost control again. Don't move, my lady. Just as she was about to stand up, Gaia heard Azazel's voice in her head, I have located the archers. If you use your arch energy, the guardians will suspect you and Lord Lucifer. I will deal with the archers from here. Since Azazel lacked a physical body and he couldn't leave the dark forest without Michael's help, he was unable to kill the archers hiding in the woods. He located them using drones and spy cams. It was either the ninjas were lucky or the ninjas were too skillful to pick a place in the woods that wasn't covered by any of the spy cams. Azazel could count 50 to 70 archers surrounding the Hades. They were rapidly firing arrow after arrow to pin everyone down. Azazel moved all the spy cams in the nearby area towards the archers. Each spy cam was made with stingers and poison. If Azazel could inject poison into the archers, he could put a stop to the rain of arrows. Fuck it, Gaia was not going to stay still while Michael was losing control of himself. I can't use arch energy, fine, I will still reach him, Gaia mumbled under her breath. What are you going to do? Peyton saw Gaia preparing to move out of the table. Whoosh. 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 On the other hand, Noah was swinging his sword, cutting the fireballs fired at him by the armored figures. Noah was on the defensive but he was gradually moving towards them. Elia, wait! Diana tried to stop Gaia, but it was too late as she leaped out of the cover. Boom! 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 The arrows and fireballs brushed past Gaia. Several fireballs blasted the wall behind her. Arg! One arrow stuck her in the arm when she leaped into the air to reach the kitchen. What the? When she reached the kitchen, she felt a cold chill running through her spine. Her face turned pale. What she saw was a gruesome massacre. Limbs, chunks of meat, severed heads, and burned pieces of cloth were everywhere. The floor was completely drenched in blood. Ghost, she uttered the word. Fear had suppressed her voice. She saw his back as he was holding a ninja by his neck against the wall. As she approached him, she couldn't help feeling dread in her core. The air in the kitchen felt chilly and the flickering orbs of light gave an eerie feeling to the place. The closer she got to him, the faster her heart started to beat. Arg! Creech! The ninja in his hand squirmed, but soon, his entire body got ripped in half by Michael. Blood and organs splashed across the floor and walls. Throwing the two halves of the body to the corner where she saw a pile of mutilated bodies, he turned back to look at her. Gaia stepped back in fear. His eyes were blood red, they were glowing as though someone lit a fire inside his eyeballs. I can control him, but not for long, his voice terrified her. It was like his normal voice and Lucifer's voice had a baby together. The glowing red eyes were flickering as he talked. We have to burn this place to the ground. Gaia conjured a ball of fire. They must not let anyone see what has happened here. Hi my wonderful readers, yes, I know you don't like Michael losing control over himself. It was part of the story and stay tuned to see how he is going to handle it. P.S. equals the final battle between Noah and Ghost will happen. No changing that. Chapter 422, Two Gods, Two Ideals. Outside the kitchen, Noah was fighting all the armored figures by himself. Regardless of their number, they couldn't get the upper hand in the fight. Noah's spells were so powerful. However, Noah did not kill any of them. He just incapacitated them as his mentor taught him. While fighting the armored figures, Noah noticed the interruption in the rain of arrows. Light blade, Noah cast the spell without chanting. A long sword sparkling materialized in his hand. The armored figure surrounded Noah. Some of them had swords, some had spears, and some cast a spell that turned their fists into fire fists. Diana's heartbeat was getting faster by the second. Looking at Noah facing all the unknown figures by himself made her uneasy. No one could tell which cultivation stage the armored figures or Noah was at. Whoosh! 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 Noah swung his light blade at the three figures dashing towards him. The figures with fiery fists shot fireballs. Nearly 20 scorching hot fireballs flew towards Noah. The figures were fast, but Noah was faster. He safely evaded their swords and counterattacked. The light sword in Noah's hand clashed with their metal swords, creating sparks of fire. Diana and Ethan looked in the direction of the kitchen. They were nervously expecting Ghost to come out of the kitchen. They did not know what happened inside the kitchen. Puriferis, expinio recta, exterminatus. After Noah knocked out the three armored figures, those who were behind them immediately cast spells. Ethan and Diana were stunned after they heard the spell casting. Ethan looked at Diana with a terrified look on his face. Diana's face was pale with shock and terror. The spells they cast conjured various objects such as a dragon head made of fiery red energy, rotating chakra, and thorns that came out from the ground beneath Noah. The thorns tried to coil around Noah's legs, but he cut the thorns like butter using his light sword. A hot stream of scorching hot fire was shot from the dragon's head. It burned the marble ground beneath to ashes as it shot towards Noah. Noah! Ethan, Diana, Zanali, and Alicia all shouted in unison. Arg! Boom! Noah let out a battle cry and swung the light blade at the stream of fire approaching him, splitting the fire in halves. The translucent light bubble around Noah flickered after the chakra hit the bubble. The force of Noah's sword swinging split the ground open. One of the armored figures fell into the crack. When he tried to get out, Noah flicked his wrist, forming a light spear in his hand. He threw the light spear at the figure. The light spear stabbed the figure through the shoulder, pinning him to the ground. Noah started to breathe heavily as he could count 20 people surrounding him. In addition, he sensed more figures flying above the building. Teacher, Noah called his teacher in his mind. They can't keep the void spell for no longer than 10 minutes, Noah. 5 minutes more and all the cultivators here would get their arch energy back, Andreas' voice reassured Noah. Noah wiped off the blood dripping down the corner of his mouth. Noah closed his eyes as the translucent bubble became brighter once again. In Cernuno, Reflectinus, Clarossi, Scorchorus, some of the figures cast the spells and at the same time, the rest of them rushed at Noah. They seemed to target only Noah. Boom! All of a sudden, a loud explosion shook the entire building. The ceiling crumbled, raining concrete bits and pieces down. The explosion did not even slow the figures down a bit. Thick gray smoke came out of the kitchen and covered the entrance. Deanna and Ethan fixed their eyes on the kitchen door. Through the cloud of smoke, they saw 2 figures walking out. Ghost, Deanna couldn't help letting out a heave of sigh in relaxation. Ethan too slightly looked relieved. When Michael came out of the kitchen, he saw nothing but ruins. His favorite restaurant and the first business he owned in this world were in rumbles. The elders and the guests were hiding behind tables while many bodies were laid on the ground under blocks of rocks. The arrows stopped fortunately, which meant Azazel had done his task successfully. Gaia's anger was bubbling inside her, yet she remained calm for Ghost. She squeezed his arm. Since they saw Ghost use his arch energy earlier, they kinda expected him to join forces with Noah and fight the armored figures. However, Michael just completely ignored the battle happening just a few meters away from him and made his way towards where Claire and the elders were. Surprisingly, the armored figures completely ignored Michael and Gaia. What is he doing? Ethan asked, bewildered. Michael stepped over an armored figure who was pinned to the ground by Noah. Ghost, Elia, get down. Gaia heard a familiar voice coming from behind a round table. However, she sensed grief in the voice of Elder Reiner. Behind the round table, Claire was sobbing. Elder Mark laid on her lap as Elder Reiner and Elder Sandra were holding Elder Mark's hand. An arrow was sticking out of Elder Mark's throat. His eyes were closed and his skin was pale as white paper. Claire looked up at Ghost. Tears were gushing out of her eyes. There were several empty vials near Elder Mark. Everyone looked at him. But there was no expression on his face at all. He stood there like a statue. Inside, Michael was burning with rage. His rage was so overwhelming that he suppressed the third persona completely. He was so pissed at himself. He blamed himself for the ambush. His mind kept reminding him that he should have been more prepared and careful. Go, Gaia said. She wasn't going to hold him back anymore. She doubted she could hold him back anymore. She herself was burning with rage. Granted, Michael and Gaia weren't close with Elder Mark as they were with Elder Reiner. Gaia was close with Elder Sandra too, as she worked with Elder Sandra managing the funds in the sect in Bradford. Yet when they saw Elder Mark's lifeless body, both of them grieved. The death of Jack flashed across their eyes. First Jack and now they lost Elder Mark. Michael was standing on one end, Noah was on the other hand, and the armored figures stood in the middle. Several figures surrounded Noah as they focused on Noah. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz of electricity reverberated the hall as bolts of lightning coiled around Ghost's hand. The two black swords materialized in his hand and soon, the lightning bolts coiled around the blades as though they were tiny snakes. "Teacher," Noah called out to his teacher in his mind. Noah was stunned to see Ghost using arch energy. I don't know. For the first time, Noah heard his teacher stutter without having an answer. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 10,000 badass points, ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 5,000 badass points, ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 4,000 badass points, ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 6,000 badass points. The sound of notifications kept ringing in his head like crazy. He completely ignored them. When a rapidly increasing amount of badass points could not put a smile on his face, one should know someone was about to get slaughtered mercilessly. Diana's jaw slightly opened as the images of the Dark Lord she saw in the future flashed across her eyes. Those who surrounded Noah dashed at him despite failing again and again to kill him. They seemed to be oblivious to Michael's existence. Michael slowly raised his sword as the golden lightning bolts coiling around the sword became brighter and brighter. In the next second, a thick bolt of lightning shot out of the end of the sword. Boom! The armored figure which got hit by the lightning bolt exploded into a red mist. A core formation level 3 cultivators stood no chance against Michael. The rest of the armored figures finally noticed Michael. They stopped attacking Noah and turned their gazes at Ghost. Noah could have easily overpowered the armored figures if he went for the kill. Instead, Noah focused on incapacitating them. Otherwise, Noah would have ended the battle long ago. Kill them all. Claire shouted. For the first time in her life, she encouraged someone to take lives. No, don't. Peyton and Zanali screamed from the other end. The armored figures momentarily stopped attacking as though they were interested in the conversation. Something about them rubbed both Noah and Michael in the wrong way. They were acting more and more like puppets who were being controlled by someone or something else. Diddle diddle, the cold words escaped Michael's mouth, you are so. He slowly stepped towards the armored figures without an expression on his face. There were 2 armored figures in front of him. One was standing with a fiery fist while the other one was pinned to the ground by Noah's light sword. Ethery Dash, the one who was standing, tried to cast a spell, Polch. His chanting was abruptly stopped by a sword through his throat. The electric bolt slid through the sword to the armored figure. The figure's body violently squirmed as smoke began to come out from the inside and out. The lightning bolts turned his body into a pile of half-burned mess within a few minutes. Ignitia, Michael turned his sword to the armored figure who was standing a couple of meters away from him. The lightning bolt shot out from the sword soared through the sky, light beam. At the same time, Noah raised his light sword as a beam of light shot out from the end of the light sword. Boom! The light beam hit the lightning bolt before it could reach the target. When they both clashed, a mini-explosion knocked everyone around them to the ground. Their eyes were locked on each other. Chapter 423, Infiltrating the Alpha Guardian. Diana clenched her fist, looking at her sons. The 2 of them looked as though they were about to start a battle. If they battled it out, none of them would survive the backlash because just the clash of their spells knocked all the armored figures out. They were still struggling to stand up. Killing is not justice, Noah said calmly. Late justice is injustice, Michael coldly replied. Noah was planning to capture everyone and interrogate them while Michael planned to kill everyone except one. Michael would then interrogate the one to get the information he needed. Either of them knew the other one wouldn't back down without a fight. Usually, Michael would have avoided fighting with Noah, especially after knowing Noah's secrets. If he was to battle Noah, he had to use his full power. Revealing his full power would eventually lead them to conclude that Ghost and Lucifer were the same people. However, Michael was confident that Noah couldn't defeat him. He would either win or their battle would be a stalemate. The odds of Noah defeating him were almost zero unless Noah revealed himself as the future Supreme Guardian and the existence of Andreas' soul. He doubted Noah would reveal his secret, so Michael wasn't going to back down. Moreover, he was pissed off. These ambushers did not only destroy Hades but also killed Elder Mark. The Guardians almost had the same justice system as in most of the democratic countries on Earth. They would first file a case, then go to trial, then another trial, and another, the case would go forever. According to the information Michael gathered on the internal workings of the Guardians, it would take at least a few years for Noah to get the one who was responsible for the ambush. The worst thing was the Guardians would keep the armored figures safe and cozy in their prison cells instead of torturing them for information. There was no way in hell Noah would torture them. For Noah, these armored figures were just another problem. With time, even he might forget about them after handing over the case to some Guardian. If these armored figures had some power behind them, they would bribe the Guardians and get them out. Michael's route was more direct and efficient, although inhumane. He did not know Noah was planning to reform the Guardian Guild and their justice system from the ground. "I'm going to stop them." Ethan could not see his two sons fight. "Stop." All of a sudden, a gentle yet mighty voice reverberated in the area. A bright beam of light shot from the sky through the broken ceiling. The beam of light sent a shock wave when it hit the ground, breaking everything around. Several figures stepped out of the bright light beam. Alpha Guardian, Peyton was startled to see the sudden appearance of the Alpha Guardian of Hunter Guardians. Michael did not recognize the elf in front of him. Golden, straight hair slightly covers a fine, lived-in face. Expressive amber eyes, set deep within their sockets, watching over the castle bodies and the rubbles calmly. Her skin was smooth as silk and so flawless. The pointy ears looked as though they were a pair of sharp daggers. The set of armor she wore had a squared helm with a face guard shaped in the face of an eagle. Attached to its side were two tall wing-shaped ornaments to mimic the shape of eagle wings. The shiny silver armor was made from many layers of smaller metal pieces, mimicking the scales of a dragon. It covered the entire front and backside, but the attachment straps leave the sides under the arms exposed, which enabled the armor to be more flexible. The edges and the linings in the armor were made of pure gold. On the chest plate, the letter H was surrounded by 4 wolves engraved. The armor made the elf look like she was almost 6 feet 6 inches in height. She looked at Ghost first and then turned her gaze to Noah. Without uttering a word, she just flicked a wrist as all the armored figures around them got beamed into the sky. Those who stepped out of the light beam with the elf also wore the same armor as the elf lady, but their faces were covered by helmets. "Guardian, sweep the place clean," the Alpha Guardian ordered her men. Everyone else breathed a sigh of relief after the Alpha Guardian's appearance. "Noah, do you need healing?" the Alpha Guardian asked Noah as he shook his head. The light sword in his hand disappeared. "You can all give your statements and leave." The Alpha Guardian did not even look at them. She just waved her hands like she was chasing dogs away. The people in the room were prominent figures. Seeing the way she acted rubbed them in the wrong way. Still, none of them expressed their dissatisfaction. The third persona inside him screamed at him to rip the elf into pieces. It couldn't take the disrespect well. Although Michael was pissed off at the Guardians, he was not stupid to go against a fusion stage level 3 warrior. Controlling the boiling anger within himself, he turned to leave. This was not the right time to go against the Guardians. The black swords disappeared into his space ring along with the golden bolts of lightning. "Not you." When he turned around, he heard the elf's voice. Without even turning back, he could tell the elf was talking to him. Gaia stood up to stand beside him. On the other side, Peyton and Zenali came to join the Alpha Guardian. "This is now a Guardian business. Stay away." "Fuck you, bitch." Michael wanted to say these words directly to her face. To be honest, he could feel the third persona inside him wanting to say this. "I don't know who ordered this," Michael said, looking around. "Whoever they are, they should pray for you Guardians to get them first." The threat was obvious. The elf could see the killing intent in his eyes. Michael did not linger around. Elder Reiner stood up carrying Elder Mark's body in his arms. Before Diana could talk to him, she saw Ghost leave the area with the people of his sect. The other elders and the guests left the area too as quickly as they could. They were afraid of another ambush. The moment they felt the arch energy again, they flew out of Hades or what was left of it. A few hours later, Michael was in the Dark Forest mansion. He did not attend the funeral of Elder Mark. After paying gold coins for the renovation of Hades, he left the sect. Apparently, the armored figures cast an illusion spell around Hades. The illusion made everything normal to the people outside, so they had no idea that there was a battle happening inside. Ricky told them about that. Daniel, on the other hand, was not so lucky. If Michael had just been a couple of minutes late, Daniel would have died. The arrows and the weapons they used prevented the healing potion from healing the wounds. "Did you manage to get any of them?" asked Michael, entering the surveillance room. "They were teleported, my lord." Azazel pointed at a mirror that showed numerous black-robed figures disappear in a blink of an eye. "So the spy cams. They were destroyed, my lord." Azazel shook his head. "Teleportation, void-creating spells, grand-scale illusions, weapons that mess with healing potions. Who are these guys?" Gaia looked at the mirrors with her hands behind her back. "Whoever they are, they just made themselves an enemy of mine. And that's gonna end very badly for them," said Michael coldly. "Arya will get you more mirrors. I have already built more drones and spycams for you. I want my eyes in every corner of this continent." "That will be done, my lord." Azazel bowed. "Lucifer, did you notice those freaks mainly targeted Noah? I have a feeling that this ambush wasn't meant for us, but Noah, I don't give a shit who their target was. They messed with me. Before all this shit, I was a hitman, I was the best. When I pick my target, I will always get them, no matter who they are, or where they are." By almost killing Cindy and Raylene, whoever sent the ninjas reached the top of Michael's kill list. "How do you plan to get them?" "By infiltrating the Guardian Guild." Gaia felt a chill. "Whoa, infiltrating the Guardians? You're joking?" asked Gaia. Her brows were arched up behind her mask. She was completely stunned. As far as she could remember, he always stayed back from the Guardian Guild. Even when they learned that Guardians was hunting him for more than 3,000 years. "I have a plan," Michael snickered. He was building this plan for quite some time and only now he got all the required items to put the plan in motion. For the next few minutes, Michael explained his plan to Gaia and Azazel. When he finished narrating his plan, Gaia was genuinely surprised. "Lord, I have only one question," asked Azazel after giving a deep thought to the plan he just heard. "Ask." Michael knew what he was going to ask. What if those armored men were teleported to the Guardian Guild headquarters? "They will decimate - Michael interrupted Azazel. "They are not in the Guardian Guild headquarters." With a wave of his hand, Michael changed the footage of all mirrors. All those mirrors worked as one single display. In the display, they saw an empty hall lit with white orbs. The Hunter Guardians of the Alpha Guardian Michael met earlier stood guarding the hole. Gaia and Azazel were bewildered as they couldn't guess where the footage was coming from. "They are in the Alpha Guardian's airship." A cold smile emerged on his face. "Did you just bug the Alpha Guardian?" asked Gaia. Chapter 424. The Dark Elf in the Tree. Michael was sitting on his throne in the dimly lit throne hall. Gaia paced towards him after finishing her tasks. "Claire has informed everyone you are going to Mazeroth as we told her to," nodded Michael. Instead of sitting on her throne beside Michael, she sat on his lap. She removed the masks on their faces and kissed him. The kiss made both of them feel lightened. With everything that happened, the kiss calmed their nerves. Michael too enjoyed the passionate break. He gently caressed her hair while kissing her longer and deeper. When his grab around her waist tightened, she purred, "Are you sure, Michael?" After several minutes of kissing, she departed her lips from his. "It's for the best." The longer I stick with the sect, the more they become the target to everyone else. Those who cannot hurt me will harm them and I won't be able to protect them forever. I can see that, but we put so much effort into the sect and it's growing up to be a formidable force. Human. Gaia placed her forehead on his forehead. She was so close to him and wrapped her hands tight around his neck. Snake, I'm just talking about graduating from the sect, not completely abandoning them. We still manage the sect from behind the scenes. He pinched her nose. I know, human. I just wanted to hear you say that. I'm not gonna stop until our sect becomes the most powerful one in this fucking world. In the future, every sector should be in our control. He could see the resolve in her eyes. It felt great to have her around. With a woman like her by his side, he could indeed take the entire world head-on. As they were talking, Azazel appeared in the hall out of thin air. Oh, forgive me, my lord, my lady. I will come back later, Azazel quickly said. Don't be a baby sea bass, Gaia chuckled, looking at the mighty demon who tried to be courteous. What is it, Azazel? Asked Michael before the demon started to blush or something. I talked to Lady Arya, my lord. I informed her brothers should stay in the manor until you return. She asked for your permission to leave Jysel and stay with her brothers. Why not? Michael wasn't going to prevent Arya from spending time with her brothers. The longer she spent time with her brothers, the more she would feel grateful to him. Thus, her loyalty to him would increase. He planned to make the two brothers his generals. Soon his undead army would grow in numbers, and at that time, he would need loyal generals to command the army. Since Arya's brothers were soldiers, with enough training, they could become great generals. However, war and commanding an army was not Michael's area of expertise. Luckily, he had the Princess of Nagaland with him. Though Gaia had no prior experience commanding an army, there was no doubt in his mind. She would make a damn good queen and a superior commander. Another loose end tied. What else should we do before departing? Asked Gaia. Nightmare is saying his goodbyes. Vidora has entered into seclusion. Maxine will be busy mining the crystals in Stormvale Mountain. Tiberius is building his own kingdom. Michael had given orders to each of his subordinates while he was away. Caius and Heinberg are working with the Maven senators to merge the two kingdoms. The civil war in Maven is still young, so it will take some time, said Michael, as though he had nothing to do with the civil war in Maven. He was the one who orchestrated the entire thing so he could merge Giselle with Maven with the support of the people of both kingdoms. Through Corey, he supplied weapons and resources to the freedom fighters in Maven who were fighting against Senator Vibius. They believed that Senator Vibius was raising taxes, driving the economy to drain, and militarizing the kingdom. They had no idea that Senator Vibius was long dead. Michael's plan was to merge all the Senate-ruled kingdoms into one single kingdom. For now, the merger of Giselle and Maven was enough. No matter what, he needed to protect the Stormvale Mountain and the existence of the Arch-Energy crystals from the Guardians. What about Sadie? Asked Gaia. Her task is to simply get stronger. I provided her with enough pills and potions to reach core formation level 7 within 4 months. The sooner she gets stronger, the better. We need to take over the Silver Moon as soon as possible. I'm getting sick of this Guardians. Michael felt the same way. It was like no matter how strong he got, the Guardians seemed stronger. However, when he thought about the third persona, surprisingly he smiled. Did you forget, darling? I am the fucking Dark Lord. Somewhere else, a man wearing long purple robes and half-moon spectacles was walking towards a giant banyan tree. A white dragon the size of a 3-month-old puppy was standing on his shoulder and calmly looking around the surroundings. The figure was none other than Wulfric. As far as one could see, there was nothing but the banyan tree and Wulfric in the place. One could wonder how such a giant tree grew on a land paved with marble stones. Several cone-shaped mountains were floating in the sky as though they were balloons. Wulfric calmly walked towards the tree. As he approached the tree moved, not the entire tree but the bark of the tree. Destiny is a mysterious thing, another calm voice sounded from within the tree. Soon, a figure emerged from inside the tree. A humanoid figure and the face of a man could be seen in the tree. Dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same, the words were spoken in a gruff voice. How are you, old friend? Wulfric asked the figure stuck to the tree. Same old Wulfric, asking the questions you already know the answer to. The figure seemed to be chuckling but the mouth did not move much. Eladir, Wulfric uttered the name. It's been ages since I heard that name, said Eladir. He sounded exhausted. It was not a surprise as he was being tortured by the Sky Hall for the last 3,000 years. Eladir was one of the founding fathers of the infamous Order of Death. He started a cult to suppress the Sky Hall. With geniuses and prodigies from every corner of the world, he and the fellow founding fathers managed to create a power that rivaled the Sky Hall itself in a mere 1,000 years. But like many powers who challenged the Sky Hall, they were obliterated. When did we last meet? 1,000 years ago or 21 years ago? Eladir amused, same old Eladir, asking the questions you already know the answer to. Wulfric began to walk around the tree with a calm smile on his face. Since Eladir was stuck to the tree and couldn't move his neck, he waited until Wulfric came before him. What's troubling you, my friend? What you did 21 years ago. You said it yourself, Eldadi, dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same. You cannot escape destiny, Wulfric sighed. You also cannot imprison the destiny, Wulfric. This time, Eladir's lips curved upwards, letting out an amused smile. No prison in the universe could hold him back. He is here, isn't he? Wulfric smiled. There was no fear in his eyes, just exhaustion. He's coming here, Eladir. I invited him. Eladir was surprised, and yet, ever since he knew Wulfric, it had always been impossible to know the reasons for his actions. He goes by the name Ghost and he has already started to grasp the power of darkness. One could not see any expression on Eladir's almost wooden-like face. But inside, Eladir was excited. 3,000 years of torture grew into a giant tree of anger towards Sky Hall in his heart. He was waiting for the day of the Dark Lord's arrival. Eladir wanted nothing but to see him burn the Sky Hall to the ground and everyone who helped Sky Hall decimate the Order of Death as well as his friends. But still, Eladir had one question after hearing Wulfric, and if you know this, why don't you go kill him? The dragon looked at Wulfric. She also had the same question as the dark elf. Meddling with gods will only lead to catastrophe, my friend. I learned that the hard way. If the world's destiny is to get destroyed by the Dark Lord and reborn as a new world, no mortal can stop that from happening. Eladir remained silent for a few moments before asking, still, why did you invite him? Let me guess, you are not going to tell me. Once again, Wulfric smiled gently. Goodbye, old friend. As he said, Wulfric placed his hand on Eladir's head as numerous symbols appeared on the tree. The faint sound of vibrations reverberated the area. Soon, Eladir's eyes began to glow too. Ish! Eladir screamed as the dragon watched the dark elf with a bewildered face. Soon, the dark elf's scream abruptly stopped. Master, what was that? I erased his memories of me. Wulfric almost sounded sad. He patted Eladir on the shoulder, which was covered by bark and a green moth. He then looked around, enjoying the serenity of the Aquilan realm one last time. Soon, everything is going to change. Wulfric closed his eyes, stroking his long white beard. A gentle breeze arrived at the same time, gathering all the green leaves shed by the banyan tree. The trees brushed past him, and when the breeze settled down, Wulfric and the dragon were nowhere to be found. They disappeared into the thin air. Chapter 425. The Grand Spire Bank in Flame Fair. One of the dukedoms of Kingdom Kethin was an imposing milky white building built with marble stones. The building was located near the avenue that led to Flame Fair Duke Avon's villa. From the street, a set of paved stairs led up to a set of burnished golden doors. The doors were flanked by an elf in a uniform of scarlet and gold. This was the entrance to the Grand Spire Bank Flame Fair branch. Before leaving for Aquilan Realm, he had to deposit a percentage of his wealth. By doing so, he would get a pay cube which was similar to a credit card on Earth. Since he agreed to become the leader of the Thusian Alchemy Guild, Calvin insisted he open an account in Grand Spire Bank so they could transfer his monthly payment without any delay. Nice, Michael nodded in approval looking at the bank before him. This building could not scream wealthy any louder. The stairs led into a small entrance hall and another set of doors. The door frame and the handles were made of pure gold. He chose not to stare at the elves at the door because he did not want to be seen as a noob who had never seen an elf in his life before. Through these doors, also flanked with elves, was a vast marble hall with long counters stretching along its length with doors leading off to the vault passageways with around 100 elves and dwarves sitting at them. The vaults extended for miles under the city and were accessible through rough stone, complex and interconnected passageways by means of magic pushcarts that were operated by dwarves. Rumor had that a dragon lurked in the depths of each branch as additional security devices. Lord Ghost, just after passing through the door, he was called by a youngster wearing sky-blue robes. He was fanning himself with a matching blue fan and when he saw Ghost, he grinned ear to ear which seemed pretty forced. "You must be the one Calvin sent." Michael shook the youngster's hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Lord Ghost. I am Liang Li, lead the way." "Li," said Michael as the youngster walked towards an elf sitting on the far end counter in the hall. He heard about elves being innately beautiful but when he saw the girl before him, he realized beautiful was an understatement. Her skin was sparkling smooth, the golden hair looked as though each strand of hair was made of gold. "Mr. Li, Lord Ghost. Please be seated," the elf said with a heartwarming smile. "You know me?" asked Ghost in doubt. The elf nodded. "It's our task to learn about potential clients, Lord Ghost." "Cool, now Lord Ghost, Mr. Li. How can I be of assistance?" Michael looked at the name board on the table before her. The name Vanya Valric was written on the board in beautiful calligraphy. "Miss Valric. You said it's your task to learn about your potential clients. So I assume you know about my two businesses." The elf nodded once again as Michael continued. "Until now I'm dealing without pay cubes but it's not, how do you say, professional and convenient." Michael was just saying this for the sake of conversation. The bank took pride in keeping the contents stored in their vaults safe and secure. However, security was not a concern to Michael as he stored his gold coins in system storage which was the most secure place he could think of. The reason Michael decided to open an account was because of Calvin and for the ease of transferring coins. To this day, when he purchases something for 100,000 gold coins, for example, he had to give 100,000 gold coins physically. That meant, stacks made of gold coins so high would appear and the seller or the owner had to count the coins. This process was tedious. If he had pay cubes, on the other hand, he could just transfer the gold coins in his Grand Spire bank account to another account easily in a few seconds. To be honest, Lord Ghost, I don't know how you managed until now without a pay cube. It's a must for a business with a caliber like yours. You have made the right choice by coming here. I would suggest you open a VIP account rather than a normal account, Lord Ghost, the elf suggested. "Let me explain the key benefits, Lord Ghost. Transferring funds in your account from one continent to another will be done within a day. If you wish to transfer items such as artifacts, paintings etc., we will handle the security so you can be at ease. Another benefit that you would be interested in more is our tax reduction." "What is that?" asked Michael. "Currently, if your monthly income is more than 10 million, you will have to pay tax to each kingdom your revenue flows through. 40% of your income will go to paying taxes. But if you are a VIP account holder in our bank, your income will be directed to your Grand Spire account and your taxes will be reduced to 30%. You will save 10%. And Lord Ghost, that's not a small percentage." The last part got him. He hated paying taxes and filling the bellies of nobles in each kingdom. If Gaia was here, she would have jumped the gun and said okay right away after hearing the elf. His current monthly income was somewhere between 14 million including his 2 million monthly paycheck from Thusian Alchemy Guild. "Miss Valric. I heard how secure your bank is, but you want to see how secure," the elf cut Michael's sentence. It'll be better if I show you instead of explaining, Lord Ghost. Shall we? The elf stood up, gesturing at Michael and Lee to follow her. Great, Michael was kinda excited. As the elf turned around to lead them to the vaults, he took out a spider from his system storage and willed it to be on his chest, sending feeds to Azazel. At the end of the brightly lit hall was a golden door. The two elves flanking the door opened it to let Valric, Michael, and Lee through. In contrast to the grand marble of the entryway and the main hall, on the other side of the door, the passageways to the vaults were stone and dimly lit with flaming torches. After following Valric for a few minutes, they came to a slop where Michael saw coiling train tracks. Levitas, a golden cart materialized on the tracks after she uttered the word. The trio climbed onto the cart one by one, and when they were settled, Valric just flicked her wrist and the cart began to run automatically. Whoa, Lee seemed a little queasy when the cart began to accelerate significantly. The cart was taking them deep beneath the surface through the maze of twisting passages. Michael tried to get a look at their surroundings, but in addition to the cart's speed, the vast, complex interconnected series of tracks prevented him from doing so. After almost 15 minutes of cart riding, the cart came to a halt in front of a giant door made of dark metal. The door stood at least 30 meters in height and 20 meters wide. This is the first security measure, Lord Ghost. This door is built to withstand any magical spells cast no matter who cast the spell. Valric sounded proud. She then placed her hand on the door and said, Obenta. The ground vibrated as the door slowly creaked open. While it was opening, Michael asked, what if someone else said the same word? Will the door still open? Valric smiled, almost seeming amused by the question. The door has runes on it which analyze the voices of Grand Spire workers in real time, Lord Ghost. Plus, the passcode changes every minute which only the authorized personnel know. Michael took a mental note, Miss Valric. How does this door open? Runes? Lee asked. No runes, Master Lee, raw physical strength. What do you mean by that? Lee couldn't help questioning. Giants, Master Lee. Only the strongest giants can open this door from inside. As for the location of the giants and the door mechanism, it is kept as a top secret. When the door completely creaked open, they were welcomed by an endless dimly lit hall with thousands of mini vortexes. These deep-sea blue vortexes were hovering in the air, and the sheer number of them startled Michael. This is the second security measure, Lord Ghost. When you open your account, a mini pocket dimension and the entryway to that dimension will be created here. Each portal is assigned a number. Only the handler of that account number could enter the portal. Every portal you see here is protected by several powerful runes and arrays. If anyone tried, not that they could come this far, they will be burnt to a crisp. What if this handler tried to get his hands on the items? Asked Michael. The handler could access the dimension, but he or she won't know the coordinates of the place where the bank keeps your items. Every dimension is near inhabitable, Lord Ghost. No one can survive there for more than an hour. So if you don't know where to look for the items, odds are you're dead. After knowing the coordinates by contacting us and passing the verification tests, the handler will be given the coordinates. The vault at the coordinates is impenetrable even by an immortal. When the client requested an item to be taken out of the vault, the bank will hand over the handler a special rune. After reaching the coordinates, the vault will ask for the passcode, which will be given to the handler from our security branch after another series of verification processes. By the minute, she was impressing Michael. Somehow these verifications sounded like intriguing death traps. On top of everything, Michael felt like he's been watched by several entities. The handler then places the rune on the vault. The rune will teleport the item directly to a secure place. The rune will change every 3 hours, so duplicating is not an option. After that, the bank will give the coordinates of the place to the client. The client has the option to pick up the item or to be delivered to the preferred location. We will take the required items from the client when opening a new account. The elf explained everything patiently. Of course, this is just the gist of it. Some parts of the security are only shared with those with high clearance levels. You can rest assured, Lord Ghost, there are no other secure places like Grand Spire in this world. Michael was truly surprised. He could not think of a single weak point in the security system, and what she told him until now seemed like only half of the security. It was evident that behind the scenes, there were more security measures in place. Therefore, robbing this place was nothing but suicide. Michael hoped he won't have to steal from Grand Spire in the future. At this time, he did not know fate had another thing in store for him. Chapter 426. Arriving at Mazaroth the next day, the sun slowly rose from the horizon, spreading its golden rays to the land. The warmth of the sun woke up the early birds along with the disciples of the Sunrise sect. The sect was completely revitalized by new buildings and majestic flower plantations. The fountains built occasionally on the neatly paved road added an extra bit of charm to the sect's beauty. Only one construction place could be seen, and it was on the place where Ghost's previous house was located. On Gaia's rampage, she destroyed the home. Ever since then, the dwarven engineer who built the Hades was tasked to build Michael's new home. Michael bought a blueprint from the system store and made some changes to accommodate his taste and the size of the land given to him, and handed the construction work to the dwarf. The total cost to build his new home was a whopping 18 million gold coins. The blueprint Michael bought was the blueprint of Updown Court in England. The changes were made to make the house smaller since Michael had no need for so many rooms and bathrooms. After discussing with the dwarf, the house ended up with 20 rooms, 10 bathrooms, and 5 swimming pools, including one private swimming pool for Gaia and Michael. Even this felt like too much to him, but Gaia insisted and refused to go lower than 20 rooms. Currently, only Gaia was standing in front of the half-built home waiting for Michael. Sorry, it took longer than I expected. Michael appeared out of thin air thanks to runic teleportation. Everything all right? Gaia asked, hugging him tight. They both continued to kiss each other before departing. Went great actually. I opened up a VIP account and Calvin's guy made a deposit of 6 million into the account as my bonus. I guess Thusians have gold to spend. We should milk as much as we can before we destroy them. Gaia grinned. What about you? Did you tell the Kane family elders we might not be able to make it to the wedding? Asked Michael. He sat on the stack of marble stones and helped Gaia up. He then put his hand around Gaia's shoulder. They are pretty pissed off about the ambush. I heard that's the hottest topic in Elon right now. And oh, the wedding has been postponed. Michael was surprised. The Kane family went to such lengths to make sure Adam weds the Oswin family heiress. It was highly unlikely they postponed because a trio of elders got ambushed. They didn't tell me why. They just told me the wedding has been postponed. Did you happen to meet Lord Ashton? Nope. Gaia shook her head. Your full name is Gaia Ashton and he is also called Ashton. You two related? It's coincidence, brat. She gnawed Michael's hand playfully. Ouch, you animal. Michael knocked her on the head. He suddenly stopped chuckling, which made Gaia frown. She looked at his face to see a worried look on his face. Don't worry, Michael. We will find a cure for your problem. I have a feeling the dark elf my mother talked about has all the answers we need. I am afraid he will have more than answers, said Michael. His gut feeling told him something was going to happen soon. Ignoring the gloomy feelings, Michael accessed the system storage to take out a brown sparkling potion. He drank the potion quickly and closed his eyes. The potion was so bitter that it made bitter melon look sweet. After he drank the potion, Gaia noticed tiny hairs coming out of his cheeks. She saw his beard grow at a visible speed. In a few blinks of an eye, his stubble beard turned bushy. His hair also grew a couple of inches, but not as much as the beard. System, upgrade her mask to the max level. He then willed the system, placing his hand on Gaia's face. She began to feel a warm wave spreading through her head. The chameleon mask has been upgraded. Anyone under the half-immortal stage will not see through the effects of the mask. The system charged 10,000 badass points for the upgrade. This was the last thing Michael planned to do before leaving for the Oculun realm. What did you do? Asked Gaia, touching her face. I made sure you stay safe. Just run if you see anyone above half immortal stage, human. I don't think those guys will be teaching their better safe than sorry. Shall we go? Michael jumped down from the stacks of marble stones. Go. Aren't you gonna tell everyone? She frowned as Michael sighed. I already told Claire. I am not very good at goodbyes. Besides, they are still grieving. We should leave them be. Whoosh. As Michael was speaking, a shadow was cast on them. They both looked up at the sky to see Nightmare slowly descending from the sky. He landed comfortably on Michael's shoulder. You're on time. Michael brushed Nightmare's neck gently. Before we go, I have a question. You are going to study. What is she gonna do? You faked the acceptance letter, but what if they have records of new admissions? If they compare the list of names with the people who arrived, she will stand out. Gaia looked at Michael, expecting him to explain. Believe it or not, Michael had the same question. However, according to the system, it altered the records somehow. At first, Michael couldn't believe the system. He never thought the system would be able to alter records of Mazeroth from another realm. Yet the system did that and reassured him that he has nothing to worry. He trusted the system enough to bring her to the Oculon realm. Where does this come from? Nightmare nudged his head on Michael's beard. Let's go, shall we? Rather than explaining and wasting time, Michael retrieved the golden parchment from the system's storage. Gaia also took out similar-looking parchment from her space ring. Both parchments looked exactly the same. No one could find any difference in the scroll except for their names. Taking out a quill from their space rings, they signed their names on the corner of the parchments as instructed. After signing, nothing happened. They just kept staring at each other. For a couple of minutes, an awkward silence filled the area. What dash, and just as Gaia was about to say something, the air around them became hotter. They felt the space around them getting distorted. In the next second, a blue vortex appeared behind them and in a blink of an eye, the vortex sucked them in. They traveled through space for more than 3 days, but for them, it felt like a couple of seconds. When they opened their eyes, they were standing on endless grassland. Wow, Nightmare's jaw dropped a couple of inches down in shock. Not only he but Gaia and Michael were also mesmerized by the beauty around them. The puffy milky white clouds seemed so close to them. Around them, there were hundreds of giant mountains in the shape of cones floating in the air. Hundreds of people flying on what seemed like swords and spears and even broomsticks. Whoosh! As they were basking in the beauty of the Oculon realm, the space around them was distorted once again. Before even Michael could turn his head, Gaia was sucked into a vortex. Michael's heart skipped a beat as he reached for the vortex to pull her out. However, it was too late. She and the vortex both disappeared. System, locate her. Where is she? He shouted at the system in his mind. Do not be alarmed, host. Gaia is still in the Oculon realm. The system has teleported her to another more suitable location. What do you mean more suitable? You will see. The system kicked him out in spite of his urge to ask more questions. The Oculon realm sky was filled with floating mountains. Each mountain looked unique. One had water flowing from the top, one was covered in vegetation, and one seemed to be covered in snow. Under different circumstances, Michael would have taken some time to enjoy the beauty in peace and calm. Now, he wanted to find Gaia first. Human, all of a sudden, he heard Gaia's voice in his head through the earpiece. Fuck, did you teleport me here? She sounded slightly annoyed because of the sudden teleportation. Trust me, I had no control. Where are you now? I think I'm on a floating mountain. So I guess, I'm still in Oculon realm. Michael sighed. Let's find where are we exactly and rendezvous somewhere. Got it. Welcome to Mazeroth, a gruff voice sounded from behind. Michael quickly turned around and saw a giant of a man walking toward him. The man was about twice as tall as an average man, standing at 10 feet tall and 3 times as wide, with a long mane of shaggy black hair and a beard that covered most of his face. He kinda reminded Michael of Hagrid in Harry Potter. The entire world seemed to be the world of wizardry in a weird way. Except this man did not speak with an accent. You must be the youngster who goes by the name Ghost, and who is this majestic creature? Jirrrr. When the man tried to pet Nightmare, the dragon showed his razor-sharp teeth. Fierce one he. I admire creatures with some spirit like this. You little dragon need all the spirit you can get to face those jerks called royal dragons. For a moment, Michael remained silent. He was scanning the man from top to bottom. Surprisingly, the man was only at the body-strengthening stage. Where are my manners? Gilrain, the groundskeeper of Maze Roth. Chapter 427, Flying Train to Maze Roth. Follow me, your ship departs in 40 minutes. Gilrain gestured at Michael to follow him. Reassured that Gaia is still in the Aquilon realm, Michael walked behind Gilrain looking around. The place was simply magical. The rainbows added another layer of charm to the already magnificent Aquilon realm. Michael did not know where Gilrain was leading him to. As far as he could see, there was nothing but grassland and floating mountains. Few of the mountains had small pagodas atop. However, those pagodas did not look like the famous Maze Roth. How may I call you? Asked Michael. Gilrain, groundskeeper, Fatso as many like to call me. Gilrain chuckled. Gilrain it is. How many students are in my batch? Michael tried to gather information about the Aquilon realm and Emazaroth starting from Gilrain, since Gilrain seemed like a talkative type. 24. The number is twice in the junior batch. Trust me, this time, we have some monsters. When they leave after 3 years of study in Maze Roth, they will rule the world. 3 years. I thought the studies in Maze Roth will be 18 months, asked Michael. Gilrain scratched his bushy beard as a few peanuts jumped out of his beard. That's for the senior batch, which is you kids. The little ones will study here for 3 years. Nightmare couldn't take his eyes off the sky where he saw countless people flying. He wanted to check out the new place by flying around. He really missed Vidora. They would have really loved the place, Nightmare thought. After almost half an hour of walking, they came to the edge of the mountain. Michael stood on the edge, looking down. There was nothing but puffy clouds down. They covered the air as though they were fluffy white blankets. You are the last one in your batch, and surprisingly you took your time. Normally kids come running here the second after they get the invitation. Michael could barely see the expression on his face through the bushy beard. I had some loose ends to tie up. For some reason, Gilrain had a weird feeling looking at the calm face of the youngster. He couldn't explain the feeling, but it was drilling his heart like a drill. Choo! Choo! The sound of the train in the distance drew their attention towards the sky. Michael was pretty surprised to see a train approaching them. The train was flying rather than running on a track. The train was at least 650 m in length. It was painted in black with the word Maze Roth Express written on the side in crimson red. Michael counted 5 coaches while waiting for the train. He couldn't help remembering the Hogwarts Express looking at the train. This whole place and Emazaroth reminded him of Harry Potter. Instead of Harry Potter, he felt like Voldemort since the Guardians named him the Dark Lord. As the train approached them, it slowed down and eventually stopped in the air above them. A bridge made of light appeared from the center car to the edge of the mountain Michael and Gilrain were standing on. Bollocks! All of a sudden, Gilrain slapped his own forehead. I forgot to pick something important. He turned to look at Michael. Do you mind going alone? I will meet you at the gateway. Michael did not know how this entire process works yet. Looking at the man's pleading face, he nodded. Sure thing, great. Hey, race your ticket. Gilrain handed over Michael a golden card the size of a credit card and flicked his wrist. A large broomstick materialized on the ground beneath his feet. In a blink of an eye, Gilrain stepped on the broomstick and disappeared into the sky in a rush. The ticket had the number 34 under the name Maze Roth written in emerald green ink. The sparkling blue light bridge seemed intimidating as Michael never walked on a light bridge before. Still, he wasn't afraid. Even if he fell, he could fly, so there was no need to be afraid. To his surprise, when he stepped on the light bridge, a loud thunder shaking even the mountains sounded throughout the realm. "That's ominous." Michael looked up at the sky. The puffy white clouds were being chased by dark gloomy clouds. The colorful realm slowly turned darker and darker. In the distance, several lightning cracks were splitting the sky. The darkness soothed. He walked the bridge with his head held high. When he finally stepped into the train, the light bridge faded away. He was welcomed by a corridor large enough for two grown men to walk side by side. There were several compartments in front of him, and each of them had a number on the door. Not a single compartment had open doors. The door near him had the number 23, and the numbers increased further. He walked through the corridor. 25, 28, Nightmare counted along the way. The train was spotless. The blue rug they were walking on was clean, and the place smelled like jasmine. He could not look into the compartments as the doors were made of some kind of redwood. The coordinator was brightly lit by golden orbs on the ceiling. Finally, several minutes later, he found the number 34. "There is no knob on the door," said Nightmare. Michael looked at the ticket in his hand, wondering how to open the door when the door next to his compartment opened. Alluring beauty with silky brown hair stepped out of the room. She wore a warm smile on her face. "You have to place your ticket on the door," the girl spoke in a melodious voice. She turned her gaze towards Nightmare while Michael was placing the golden ticket on the door. Her warm smile and beauty mesmerized Nightmare. He was just staring at the girl's face without batting an eye. Several runes began to glow when the ticket touched the door. A golden knob appeared as Michael twisted the knob to open the door. The compartment was a small room with a single door opening to the long corridor. There appeared to be seating for up to 6 adults or 8 children in the compartment, on 2 cushioned benches facing each other. "Thank you, don't mention it, number 34, she smiled, making Michael frown. "You seem like you don't know it. In Mazeroth, no student is allowed to use their names. Just only by the numbers given to us when they sort us into specialization houses. I am 33 until I get my student number. I'm your neighbor." The girl reached out her hand to shake his hands with a bright smile. She seemed warm and friendly, and deep down, she reminded someone of him. For the sake of manners, Michael shook her hand. She did not linger around to have a conversation as she returned to her compartment. He entered his compartment and sat next to the window. The windows were getting covered by tiny droplets of water formed by the drizzling rain. As though the train was waiting for him to settle in his compartment, the train began to move only after he reached his place. "Where is she?" Nightmare asked again. He jumped onto Michael's lap and looked at him with a worried face. "She's fine," he said before calling the system in his mind. "System, scan this compartment. I want to know if there is something that could spy on us. That will be 100 badass points." As usual, he had to pay the system to get it to do something. Surprisingly, the system informed him there is nothing in the compartment that could spy on them. "Where are you?" It took several seconds to get a reply from Gaia. "Human, you're not gonna believe this." Gaia sounded excited. "I will tell you everything when you come here." Michael frowned. "Are you in Mazeroth?" "Yeah." "Holy shit, Michael, you have to see this place. This is fucking awesome." He was stunned because Gaia was extremely hard to please, yet even he praised the place and seemed shocked by Mazeroth's beauty. "I have a surprise for you, Mikey. Come sooner, it'll be waiting for you." "Shit, I gotta go." The connection broke off abruptly. Although he did not know what was the reason for her excitement, he was relieved to hear she made it into Mazeroth without a problem. Inside the compartment next to Michael's compartment, 2 girls were drinking hot tea facing each other. "Edith, who were you talking to?" asked Victoria, the girl who betrayed Abras and sent a dagger through his heart. Michael was oblivious to the point that he was sitting next to the Princess of Thusia, and the girl who he just talked to was the younger sister of Layla Alden. "Number 34, Edith chuckled, winking at Victoria. "You know, he was pretty okay in the eyes. Good height, awesome body. Regardless of his robes, I was still able to see his muscles flexing out. Plus, he has a dragon for a familiar, let me guess, a forest dragon. Victoria did not even look at Edith. She was still looking outside through the window and calmly taking sips from her cup. How did you know? Edith was shocked, because if he had a royal dragon, would have known him and you would have known him, Victoria calmly said. Anyone could see the superiority in her voice. So what? I'm telling you, you should find a boyfriend, and this is the only place you might find the one who fits your criteria. You always ask me to find a boyfriend. What about you? Have you confessed your feelings to your sweetheart? Edith's face immediately turned red. Or you're going to tell me that you and Noah are just friends? Victoria was smiling. As far as she was concerned, nothing could worry her, and she and her family were reaching for heaven with the help of Cosmic Stream. Only if she knew the deadliest man in the world was sitting next to her with a vengeance against her and her kingdom. Chapter 428, Runemaster. I should check out what's happening. After traveling for an hour, he eventually decided to send spiders throughout the train. Open the door, Michael said to Nightmare, who was watching the outside with his nose pressed against the window. Nightmare flew towards the doorknob and opened the door by twisting the knob using both of his hands. Michael sent several spiders through the door. Nightmare kept watching the spiders crawling out the door and activating their camouflage to blend in with the environment. The corridor was pretty much empty except for a few youngsters who put their heads out the door to look at the corridor as though they were expecting someone. Michael was watching everything with his eyes closed. The feeds were running in his mind. Although it was stressful to watch them in his mind, he was not in the situation to set up mirrors or contact Azazel. Speaking of Azazel, Michael tried to establish a connection with his demon butler, but he was unable to connect with him. It didn't come as a surprise to Michael, as his earpieces lacked the power to enable him to communicate between realms. The spiders he sent towards the front of the train returned nothing. However, the ones that went on the other side showed him something interesting. It was a sight of several youngsters who were tall, lean, and mean-looking ganging up on a youngster. The guy who was getting the beating curled in the shape of a question mark to cover his chest, gut, and face. The elves wore robes so fine and silky. They looked like they were weaved using golden threads. They neatly combed their golden hair and wore a silver circlet with a red ruby in the center. Their pointy ears and flawless smooth skin were a dead giveaway of their identity as elves to Michael. He could not identify the youngster's race as he was covering his face. Michael moved around the spiders to get a better angle. Filthy half-blood, thank Galadriel we could only give you a beating, let's just cut his ears, I feel disgusting just by kicking this filthy half-blood, the elven youngsters were shouting while beating the one who they called half-blood. Michael began to realize what was happening, and his suspicion was confirmed when he saw the ears of the youngster who was getting beaten up. Those ears were not as pointy as the ears of the elves, still they were not the ears of humans. Half-elf, Michael thought. He heard Claire's grandfather Christopher talk about the proud nature of elves. Because Claire's mother, who was an elf, eloped with a human, the House of Elican sent a mage to capture Elasha, Claire's mother, and put a powerful cure on Christopher and Claire's father. Claire was a half-elf too, but she seemed completely human, unlike the youngster. Although Claire was an exceptional beauty, it was still far too for someone to say she has elven blood running in her body. I am tired, yeah, I need some blood wine, and I need to change my shoes because of this filth. The youngsters began to kick the half-elf harder and harder, but soon, they left him alone. Michael saw the half-elf lying on the ground still. He almost thought the half-elf lost consciousness because of the beating the elves gave him. The half-elf surprised him by standing up. Now that the half-elf was on his feet, Michael could see his face. The half-elf had a pair of blue eyes, golden shoulder-length hair, warm ivory skin tone, as well as a pair of arched eyebrows on his long face. Unlike the elves, the half-elf was wearing a cream-colored jacket, black pants that had several stitches, and worn-out brown boots. The half-elf bent backward holding his waist. Oh my back, the half-elf grimaced. He then wiped off the blood coming out from his nostrils, and surprisingly, he grinned ear to ear. The reason for his happiness was revealed to Michael when the half-elf opened his fist. Michael saw several silver rings. Great harvest. I hope these assholes have something valuable inside, the half-elf mumbled under his breath. Still, Michael was able to hear him. The half-elf gawked back and forth before rushing towards the back of the train. Interesting, Michael moved the spiders behind the half-elf to follow him. The half-elf passed every compartment until the last one. Yet, he never opened the last compartment. He walked past the compartments and stepped into the last couch, which was one open compartment. Several suitcases were lying around and some of them were opened. Clothes and books were lying around chaotically. The half-elf jumped onto a stack of suitcases. The half-elf looked around, closed his eyes, and placed one space ring on his right palm. Michael was staring at the half-elf curiously. The half-elf remained with his eyes closed for a couple of minutes. When the half-elf opened his eyes, his index finger was glowing. He touched the space ring with his index finger as the space ring began to tremble. The half-elf moved his finger, drawing some kind of symbol on his palm. Boom! The trembling space ring all of a sudden exploded. Yet, there were few items materialized on the floor just after the space ring exploded. Michael saw a couple of jade daggers, scrolls, and a few gold coins. The half-elf frowned. Damn it, he cursed, waving his hand. A beam of light shot out from the half-elf's palm and engulfed the items. The very next second, the light beam disappeared along with the items on the floor. The half-elf continued to break the space rings one by one. Each time he broke a space ring, he ended up stealing the leftover items. A rune master, Michael realized the specialization of the half-elf while watching him break open the space rings one by one. Obviously, the half-elf was destroying the space rings along with most of the items inside. Still, it was a great feat that many believe that space rings are unbreakable. If he was called by Mazroth, he must be a gifted one, Michael thought. For a long time, he was looking for a rune master to serve him. It seemed like he had finally found a suitable candidate to recruit. The problem was, however, how he should approach the half-elf. He could either meet the half-elf as Ghost or Lucifer, but getting into his Lucifer persona in the Aquilon realm was a risk. Therefore, he decided to approach him as Ghost. Fortunately, the girl he met told him that in the Aquilon realm, Mazroth in particular, everyone would be called using their student numbers rather than real names. If he played his cards correctly, he could hide his identity and recruit him into the order. Several minutes later, the half-elf broke all the space rings in his hand. He jumped down to the floor with a grin. It's time to find another group of racist assholes to steal from. The half-elf made his way towards the student compartments once again. The half-elf walked out of the compartment having no idea of being followed. Inside compartment 33, Edith and Victoria were staring at an orb floating in the middle of them. Why does your father want you to hide your identity? Edith asked. The orb was powered with Cosmin C energy. Hence, they were able to communicate with Victoria's father in Thusia using the orb. I don't know, but Dad must have his reasons. In her life, Victoria had never questioned her father's decisions. For her, he was the greatest ruler born to unite the entire world under the name of Thusia. She believed it was her destiny to rule the united world as the Empress of Thusia. At least I don't have to wear any masks to hide my face. Edith rolled her eyes. She did not seem very happy about Victoria hiding her face as well as her identity as the Princess of Thusia. So be glad, Victoria said, flicking her wrist. A porcelain mask appeared on her face. She slowly placed the mask on her face. Victoria kept the mask on her face and gradually, the mask merged with her face, changing her facial feathers and the color of her hair. In mere moments, Victoria's face transformed completely. She looked nothing like the Victoria Edith knew and saw a few seconds ago. This is going to be weird, Edith said. She couldn't help reaching out to feel Victoria's face. Her face was still soft and very human-like. Now can you keep your mouth shut, Eddie? Edith knocked Victoria on the head playfully. I'm not a secret spiller. You can hide your face, but you cannot hide who you are. Eventually, you yourself will reveal your identity, and I'll have to save you. But as usual, Edith said, puffing her chest out. Tell me the one time you saved me, asked Victoria. Edith stuck her tongue out, since not even once she saved Victoria from trouble. On the contrary, it was always Victoria who saved Edith from trouble. She was friends with Victoria as far as she could remember. Simply, they were family to each other. They did not keep secrets from each other except for Victoria's involvement in acquiring the cosmic stream. However, that was because Victoria's father made Victoria promise not to tell anyone until they obtained the cosmic stream. Edith would have stopped Victoria and persuaded her to find another way instead of betraying someone using love. For Edith, love was the most precious thing in the world. Because Victoria was her best friend, subconsciously Edith ignored the fact Victoria faked being in love with Obras and betrayed him for the cosmic stream. Thusians did get the cosmic stream, and they were using the stream to become the strongest. However, they failed to realize that the power came at a cost. Chapter 429, Castle of Mazeroth. Castle of Mazeroth. While Michael was coming to Mazeroth on the train, Gaia had already reached the outskirts of Mazeroth. Mazeroth Castle was a large, 9-story-high building supported by celestial magic with 252 staircases throughout its many towers and turrets and very deep dungeons. The castle was built 4,000 years ago by a 6-star architect and the four most celebrated cultivators of the age, Archer Crook, Ingrid Stenham, Chio Jean, and Karjan Pavlovich. All of them were 6-star warrior, alchemist, rune master, and blacksmith respectively. The castle was the main building of the Mazeroth, regarded as the finest academy for studying wizardry in the world. Mazeroth was built on the Mother Mountain in Aquilon Realm. The Mother Mountain was said to be one giant mountain before something destroyed the mountain into pieces. The floating mountains were once pieces of the Mother Mountain. Mazeroth was surrounded by a fairly large lake to the south of the main building. The huge main oak front doors that led into the entrance hall faced west and opened up to sloping lawns. Endless forest extended around to the west of the castle. There were also exterior greenhouses and herbs patches on the school grounds for the alchemy students. Due to its ancient age and the sheer amount of celestial energy present in or around it, the castle had developed a form of sentience, though none could confirm this. Gaia just came out of the forest to the west. She was stunned by the sheer magnificence of the castle. She always praised the castle of Nagaland and took pride in the castle her ancestors built. However, the castle of Mazeroth made the castle of Nagaland look like a poor shack. "Ah, miss," suddenly Gaia heard a voice from behind. In a split second, a long sword appeared in her hand. She turned around at lightning speed. God. The one who shouted seeing her sword against his throat was a giant of a man. His face was almost covered by a tangled mane of a beard. "Miss, my name is Gilrine." "The groundskeeper of Mazeroth," said Gilrine without moving an inch. The pointy edge of the sword was just an inch away from his throat, and the girl looked as though she would send the sword through his throat if he dared to move. Prove it. Gaia was the intruder, yet she intimidated Gilrine without showing any hesitation. She trained herself to proficiently lie before meeting Ghost, but after meeting him, he honed her skill of lying further. One of the lessons she learned from Ghost was that the best way to lie was to believe the lie. Slowly, Gaia threatened when Gilrine tried to move his hand. "My card is in my pocket." Gilrine slowly moved his hand inside his coat pocket. Gaia heard several sounds. She even heard a bird squeak. Gilrine let out an awkward smile, trying to find his identification card given to him by the headmistress. It took him almost 5 minutes to find the card. Gaia noticed Gilrine taking out a silver card with his picture on it. The words "Groundskeeper of Mazeroth" was etched onto the card in gold. Excellent, she thought to herself. "Miss, can you please?" Gilrine gently touched the sword, pleading for her to take the sword away from his throat. Gaia looked at Gilrine from top to bottom before finally moving the silver sword away from his throat. She put the sword into the sheath hanging on her waist. Gilrain sighed. Miss, how did you get here? You should be with your batchmates on the train, frowned Gilrain. Batchmates? Who do you think I am? I am the new combat professor, Nayla Steinmeier, she exclaimed, flicking her wrist as a silver card similar to Gilrain's identification card appeared in her hand. She threw the card at Gilrain. Gilrain was taken aback by surprise. At most, she would be 30, and 30 was way too young to be a professor. Still, the identification card showed him that she was indeed Nayla Steinmeier, the new combat professor. If Headmaster recruited her to teach the art of combat to the students, Gilrain had no doubts that she was the best because Mazeroth accepted only the best of the bests. Professor Steinmeier, you were hunting out in the woods? Asked Gilrain. The thought of Gaia killing another imposter and taking her identification card and pretending to be Nayla Steinmeier never came across Gilrain's mind. After being teleported by the system, she woke up in the forest. While she was searching for a way to get back to Michael, she ended up in the middle of a battle between two girls. They were equally matched, and when Gaia saw them, both of the girls were badly injured by each other. She did not interfere. However, she wanted to contact Michael and ask him what to do when both the girls used the most powerful spell in their arsenal. Unfortunately, the two girls died on the spot. As usual, Gaia tried to loot their bodies. The spells destroyed their bodies along with all their belongings except for the identification card and the long sword in her sheath. The moment she picked up the card, she experienced acute pain in her face. Surprisingly, the mask Michael gave her transformed her face to look like the face on the identification card. Are you going to stand there or show me around the castle? Yes, this way, Professor Steinmeier. We still have some time before the students arrive. Gilrain walked in front of her, taking the lead. While showing around the castle grounds, Gilrain went on and on about the history of Mazeroth. Gaia paid no heed to the history lesson. Show me the tree, huh? Gilrain was confused by her sudden question. They were at the training grounds, which was a flat, shortcut grassy area and were located near the greenhouses. There was no tree in the vicinity, so he scratched his bushy beard with a confused look on his face. Can you be more specific, Professor Steinmeier? Never mind, I will practice my punches later, Gaia lied. She wanted to find the tree her mother talked about, the tree with the dark elf. She probed Gilrain because he seemed to know a lot about the castle grounds and the Oculun realm. Since there was nothing but a confused look on his face, she learned that the location of the tree was well hidden. Gilrain, they were on their way to the courtyard when Gaia met a tall, severe-looking lady in her late 60s. Her dark hair was tied up in a bun and wore round spectacles. Gaia's heart skipped a beat as the woman was a level 10 fusion stage cultivator. Headmistress Martin. Gilrain bowed his head with the utmost respect. The lady nodded in return before turning her gaze towards Gaia. Oh, Headmistress Martin, this is Professor Nayla Steinmeier, our new combat professor. How stupid of me. You must have known this. Gilrain let out an embarrassed chuckle. New professor. Wulfric did not say anything about getting a new combat professor. I checked her identification card, Headmistress, Gilrain said before Gaia could open her mouth. It must have slipped his mind. Fortunately for Gaia, Headmistress Kayla was on an urgent business and she trusted Gilrain and the security measure of Mazeroth. Hence, she did not think Gaia was an imposter. In a blink of an eye, Kayla turned herself into a milky white eagle and flew into the dark sky. Gaia was stunned yet again. She is the best shapeshifter there is, Gilrain proudly said. Gaia could also notice a tear dropping rolling out of his eyes in pride. Through the oak door in the courtyard, they stepped into the castle. The corridors were as wide as a spacious hall. It was brightly lit with huge chandeliers and giant candles. Where is everyone? Gaia couldn't help asking Gilrain, looking at the empty corridors and halls. This entire time, she saw no one except Gilrain and Headmistress Martin. Once again, she looked around, standing in front of the giant oak door. Instead of answering, Gilrain just grinned. Then, he pushed open the oak door. The moment the door was opened, the silence she experienced disappeared. The bustling sound and the chitter-chatter of people reverberated in the area. "Welcome to Mazoth, Professor," Gilrine said proudly. The bustling large hall before her was the main hall of Mazoth. It had enough space to hold every student, as well as the main staff and guests. The hall had tall walls that reached up to the ceiling, which was covered with floating candles and enchanted to look like a starry sky. At the front of the hall was the staff table, which was designed to house the entire Mazoth staff. In the center of the table was a throne chair where the headmaster sat. In front of the staff table were 5 6-foot pillars. The pillar in the center was made of glass, unlike the rest of them, which were made of granite stone. The hall was lit by thousands and thousands of candles that were floating in midair over 4 long tables, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. Gaia looked upward and saw a velvety black ceiling dotted with stars. It was nothing like the starry sky she had seen, it was more beautiful, more mesmerizing. She really had a hard time believing there was a ceiling there at all, and that the hall didn't simply open onto heaven. The students were busy gossiping and playing as they did not notice Gaia. Chapter 430, Sorting Ceremony L. Finally, the train came to a halt. One by one, the compartment doors opened. Michael waited for everyone to leave before he left the train last. When he came to the door, the scenery before him took his breath away. "Wow!" Nightmare exclaimed. Unlike Michael, who meditated on his way, Nightmare was looking at everything through the windows still. When he saw the place with nothing in front of his eyes, the place looked 100 times more stunning or more. For Michael, the Mazoth castle immediately reminded him of Hogwarts. Of course, the castle was unique in its own way. Now that he stepped outside the train, he was able to see more and more students who seemed to be of the same age as him. He could see almost every fantasy race, such as elves, dwarves, humans, orcs, and beastmen. The elves were standing in a group away from the other races, while the dwarves seemed to be cursing at the elves for some reason. The tension between the two races was visible. Almost every single one of them was familiar with them. The elves mostly carried a beautiful snowy owl in a cage. Contrary to the elves, the dwarves were standing beside various breeds of dogs. Michael smiled inside, seeing dog breeds such as Husky, German Shepherd, and Bulldogs in this world. Some of the dogs, however, had wings and pointy ears. Taking his eyes off the dwarves, he noticed the growling faces of orcs and the beastmen. Orcs were the bodybuilders of this world. Their bulky muscle mountain physique itself terrified many humans. Despite their terrifying look, the orcs were a peace-loving race. Only a few tribes such as Dalar's tribe advocated war and violence. According to Gaia, the orcs preferred to live in peace and prosper through trade routes with nearby kingdoms. The orcs were the only powerful race in the world who did not have their own kingdom. Almost all the orcs had a raccoon with a long bushy tail sitting on their shoulders. Among the humans, he was standing last beside the half-elf. Each and every man and girl in the crowd carried an exotic rare familiar. The dragons were said to be a rare race, yet he could see a bunch of dragons flying around like flies. Some of the dragons radiated a noble aura, their demeanor, the way they looked at the others, the shininess of their scales, simply, those dragons stood out. Edith and Victoria were standing in the front. Since Michael had no idea who they were, he paid little attention to them. His full focus was on the half-elf and the majestic castle in front of him. "Why are we standing here? Where is that giant?" The elves began to show their discontent with waiting. Only the elves were daring enough to be like this. The rest of them were glad to be a part of Mazoth, unlike the elves. The more he saw the elves, the more he realized the assholeness of the elves. On top of being racists, they seemed to be lacking patience. Michael looked around his surroundings. They seemed to be in the training grounds because the grass field was neatly pruned and he could notice pitches resembling cricket pitches. The cultivation level of each individual surprised Michael. None of them was stronger than him. Only one girl seemed to be on the same stage as him. With the experience points he received from the Reapers Gaia killed and the ninjas he killed back in Hades, he was able to reach core strengthening stage level 4. He was the strongest among them and the girl piqued his curiosity. However, curiosity wasn't enough for him to go to the front and talk to the girl. He had more pressing issues to take care of. In this world full of surprises, it was logical for someone else to be stronger than him at this point in his life. It would take him decades to be the strongest of them all. Silence, an authoritative voice sounded from above them. All the students looked upward and saw a group of 4 descending. The leading figure was a young man wearing square glasses, behind him were 2 girls and a youngster who showed his chiseled body and magazine-worthy abs. The gray-haired young man wearing glasses was in silver armor that fit perfectly on his body. He carried a heavy sword on his back. Just like Michael, this youngster too had a short haircut. The blonde-haired girl behind the young man looked cold, stern, and unsympathetic. The other girl whose black hair flayed in the wind had a warm smile on her face. She seemed more friendly and very approachable than the other girl. Currently, the 4 of them slowly descended onto the ground. Unfortunately for Michael, all of them were core formation level 10 cultivators. While he was in the Aquilon realm, he did not want to stand out. The attraction would hurt his search for the dark elf in the tree. He simply preferred anonymity in Aquilon realm. He never expected that he would be the strongest among them. He could however hide his cultivation level with the help of the system, but that would definitely raise red flags if someone tried to perceive his cultivation level, especially the professors. The other option was to lower his cultivation, except if they used powerful arrays, his real cultivation would be exposed and result in unnecessary complications. Therefore, Michael mingled with the crowd, staying at last. Since the half-elf was a thief, he too naturally stayed behind. Nightmare wrapped his tail around Michael's neck as he stared at the other dragons in wonder. He had never met his species and he was curious about the other dragons. Welcome to Maze-Roth. I am Elliot Watson, the head prefect, the youngster carrying the heavy sword proudly said. He adjusted his glass before continuing, shall we? Elliot looked over his shoulder at the tall bulky youngster behind him. The students including Michael did not know what the 4 of them were planning to do. Soon, he found out when a hot air brushed past them. The heavy sword which was in the sheath a second ago was now in his hand. Even Michael failed to notice as the youngster moved too quickly, faster than blinking an eye. As expected, Elliot nodded. He then turned his gaze back at the new students. Listen to your prefects and don't taint the proud name of Maze-Roth. If you do, I will take care of the matter myself. Then the 4 of them took off, leaving the students confused. Only a few students could guess why they came. The hot air brushed past them with celestial energy. Elliot checked if there was an imposter amidst them. Although the odds of forging the teleportation scroll to Maze-Roth were near 0 and no one had managed to do so, it was customary for the head prefect and the student leaders of each specialization to conduct a search when the new students arrived. Michael felt a major déjà vu looking at the disappearing figures of the 4 students. It felt like yesterday he saw Alex, Adam, Selena, and Sadie at the Heaven's Gate competition. As he was looking at them, he felt the half-elf moving his hand through his coat. The half-elf was daring to pickpocket Michael. He could tell the half-elf was highly trained by the way he was moving his hands. Too bad the half-elf was trying to pickpocket the Earth's #1 hitman and the deadliest man. Your trick won't work on me, half-elf, Michael whispered to the half-elf. The half-elf's face instantly became paler. You need fingers to break open those space rings you stole. Don't make me break them, he whispered to the half-elf with a smile on his face. To others, they were like friends having a nice chat. The half-elf shivered after he heard Michael. He had no idea how the human next to him found out about his trick of breaking the space rings. It took him years to come up with a rune hack to break open the space rings. There is that giant, someone should teach him the concept of time. When everyone saw Gilrain walking out through the door in the courtyard, the elves began to bitch. Welcome, welcome to Mazeroth, someone already said that. Now lead us to the sorting pillars without wasting our time anymore. One of the elves rolled his eyes. His arrogant demeanor drew everyone's attention, including Michael's. He was one of the elves who beat the half-elf earlier on the train. Gilrain's grin shrunk. Sorry, now if you follow me, Gilrain said, clearing his throat to disguise the embarrassed look on his face. Despite his look, Gilrain seemed to be a soft-hearted man. The elves followed Gilrain first as the others followed them behind. The half-elf tried to speed up his steps, try to escape and they'll tell the elves what you did to their stuff. His words stopped the half-elf in his way. I don't know what you are talking about, said the half-elf. Nightmare. Michael gently nudged Nightmare's chin as he leaped onto the half-elf's shoulder. The half-elf almost shouted and swatted away Nightmare, but Nightmare's razor-sharp teeth stopped him from doing so. Walk with me, said Michael, following the crowd. The half-elf realized he had no choice but to follow him because the man walking in front of him was the strongest of them all. He made an amateur mistake by not checking his cultivation before trying to pickpocket him. However, he did not have to worry for long as the professors would strip away their cultivation after the sorting ceremonies. The students would only be allowed to use their cultivation during certain tasks and assignments. Hey, little dragon, the half-elf smiled at Nightmare. You're either extremely lucky or unlucky. The half-elf couldn't guess whether to laugh or cry hearing the dragon. What's your name, by the way? Asked Nightmare. Wilkes, the half-elf sighed, giving the dragon one of his aliases. Chapter 431, Sorting Ceremony. Michael followed Gilrain while keeping an eye on the half-elf. The walls above the corridors were filled with dancing plants and talking portraits. The closer he got to the oak door at the end of the corridor, the louder the students began to chit-chat. They were clearly more excited than Michael. Under different circumstances, Michael would have enjoyed spending his time on Mazeroth. The third persona problem of his prevented him from appreciating the life around him. What's behind this door is the Heaven Kids. Gilrain grinned ear to ear before opening the oak door. And just as Michael expected, the hall reminded him of Hogwarts' Great Hall. Each specialization class was called a house. The house tables were as follows from left to right: warriors, runemasters, blacksmiths, and alchemists. Each long table was designed to resemble their houses. The table of warriors looked like a long sword, the runemaster's table was etched with countless glowing runes, and the blacksmith table was made of metal rather than wood like the rest of the tables. Finally, the alchemy table had veins coiling around and little sprouts were sticking out from within the table. The 5 pillars drew Michael's attention. They were situated just before the staff table. Each pillar contained a glowing rune except for the pillar in the middle. The 2 pillars left to the center pillar had a crimson-red sword and navy-blue chakra on top of them. The pillars on the right had a silver anvil and an emerald-green tree etched onto them. Only the girl sitting at the far end of the staff table was young and the rest of the staff were mature and older. Everything seemed in order, the little children who were in the first years murmuring excitedly and enjoying the magical atmosphere. The staff wore warm smiles on their faces and the throne in the middle of the staff table remained empty. Only one professor who was in complete black robes was yelling at a student with a bloody face. The professor kept slapping the boy despite the wounds on his face. Eventually, the professor noticed the new students and let go of the student with a final slap to the back of his head. Students, please be silent. One of the professors who wore a pointy hat on her hat clapped her hands. Her clapping was as loud as thunder. The great hall immediately became silent. Gilrain walked towards the staff table to take his seat beside the youngest professor at the table. Headmistress Kayla stood up to welcome the new students. I am Headmistress Kayla Martin, and before we begin the feast, we will conduct the sorting ceremony. Please step forward and place a drop of your blood on the center pillar. The first years were curiously looking at them to see who was going to end up in their house. They were even betting on them as though Michael and the others were racehorses. You will receive your student ID after you're sorted into one of the 4 proud houses: warriors, runemasters, blacksmiths, and alchemists. It's forbidden to use your real identity while you're studying in Maze Roth. Your student number will be your identity for the next 18 months, Professor Kayla explained. Michael sighed and relaxed inside. With this rule, he could hide his real identity rather easily. Also, if someone messed with him, he would be able to beat the crap out of them without worrying about the consequences for once. Now step forward one by one. She returned to her seat as the sorting ceremony finally began. The first one to step forward was the elf who bitched about Gilrine being late. With his chest puffed out and head held high, he made his way towards the center pillar. Rather than using a dagger to cut his palm to shed blood, he cut his palm using just his delicately pruned and manicured nails. He touched the pillar with his bloody hand. The blood was instantly absorbed by the pillar and the glowing runes on the pillars lost their glimmer. The next moment, the center pillar began to vibrate. The pillar with crimson-red sword rune glowed brighter as the first-year student sitting on the warrior house table cheered thunderously. The elf grinned arrogantly. Soon, a cloud of smoke emerged from the center pillar forming the number 23. Humph, he snickered at the others for no reason before walking to the table of warriors. Following number 23, many of the elves were sorted into the house warrior. Some of the elves ended up in the house of runemasters. If the elves were warriors, the dwarves were blacksmiths. Unlike the elves, every single dwarf ended up in the house of blacksmiths. There was not a single elf sitting on the table of blacksmiths. To Michael's surprise, when someone sorted into the house of alchemists, the entire hall was rather silent. Even the students sitting at the house alchemists' table did not cheer for the new additions to their house. Michael did not know the reason for this exactly, but he deemed the alchemists were considered inferior compared to the rest of them. As a 5-star alchemist, he felt offended by the thought. One by one everyone got sorted into their houses. Nothing interesting happened until a red-haired girl touched the pillar. This girl went after the girl who talked to him back on the train. When the girl touched the pillar, both the pillar of warriors and the pillar of runemasters let out a blazing glow. Even the proud elves were stunned beyond words. Number 34, Headmistress Kayla stood up from her chair. As a headmistress of Maze Roth, she had seen many students with more than one specialization. She even saw a couple of students with 3 specialization talents. Every time they admitted new students, they would see 1 or 2 students with 2 specialization talents. You can choose either warriors or runemasters. The choice will be yours and yours alone. Everyone stared at Victoria for her answer. While they were looking at Victoria, Michael was searching around to see her familiar because the girl didn't seem to have one on her. Only a couple of students remained without having a familiar, and she was one of them. Professor, I choose warriors. The moment Victoria chose the warriors, the students of Warrior House let out thunderous cheers. They were excited to welcome such a talented person to their house. The more talented students they had, the higher the chance to win the House Cup at the end of the year. Eventually, Michael's turn came as he stepped towards the pillar. Although the students had seen numerous students before him, they still had the same excited look on their faces as they had for the first student. System, you know what to do, he willed the system in his mind as he cut his palm with a dagger. He simply placed the bloody palm on the pillar and then, the pillars began to vibrate. The half-elf was rather curious to see the human specialization. His curiosity was soon answered when the rune on the alchemy pillar shone. As usual, the students looked bummed after he was sorted into the alchemists. Michael on the other hand was glad, and in fact, he was the one who ordered the system to manipulate the pillars. He did not want to draw attention by showing his true powers. If the system hadn't intervened, both the alchemist and warrior pillars would have lightened up brighter than Victoria. If that had happened, even Kayla would have been stunned because in the history of Maze Roth, only once did the alchemy pillar and the warrior pillars light up at the same time. It was by the Supreme Guardian Andreas. Number 66, Michael was given the number 66 as his student number. Eventually, after an hour, the sorting ceremony came to an end. As expected, Wilkes, the half-elf, was sorted into the House of Runemasters. Unfortunately for Wilkes, there weren't any half-elves in the House of Runemaster, and in fact, there was not a single half-elf other than him in the hall. Michael noticed not only elves and humans but everyone isolating Wilax at the table. Only a couple of orcs remained still without moving away from Wilkes. Although Wilkes seemed to be used to this treatment by everyone, Nightmare could see the pain and anger in his heart through his eyes. I can turn this hate into loyalty, Michael said to himself, sitting on the alchemist's table. After the last dwarf got sorted into the House of Blacksmiths, the sorting ceremony finally came to an end. The throne at the center of the staff table remained empty to the end. Headmistress Kayla yet again stood up from her chair with a wine glass and a silver spoon in her hand. She tapped the glass with her spoon. Students, the entire hall went silent. Let the feast begin. The golden plates and goblets on the tables were instantly loaded up with delicious food. The new and the old students alike dug into the feast, devouring everything before them. The food could be on par with Raylene's cooking. Hence, even Michael was unable to resist the mouth-watering deliciousness in front of him. Everything in the cooking book could be seen on the table. There were roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, joints, steak, boiled potatoes, roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, chips, pudding, peas, and carrots. The desserts such as blocks of assorted ice cream, apple pies, chocolate gâteau, treacle tart, pumpkin tart, chocolate eclairs and jam donuts, trifle, and strawberries were served for the students who craved sweets. After the last student licked his bowl clean, the food on the table magically disappeared as the table became empty once again. Now the students can take some time to bask yourselves in the beauty of Mazeroth. But remember, the forest to the west is forbidden for the students. Headmistress Kayla's words piqued his curiosity. If the forest was forbidden, he knew there must be some secret hiding within the forest, and that secret might be the dark elf he was looking for. Follow him or he'll bite your head off, Nightmare threatened Wilkes when he tried to walk in the opposite direction of Michael. Chapter 432, Angels in the Nether Realm. Students, Headmistress Kayla called out the students, please be aware that after midnight, your cultivation will be temporarily blocked. You are only allowed to use your arch energy during certain events. Now you can leave if you wish. The new students excitedly rushed out of the door to explore the castle. Michael also left the table without talking to his fellow alchemists. He was not in the mood to make new friends. Exiting the great hall, Michael walked aimlessly exploring the castle. Occasionally the first years would bump onto him. They all looked so happy. Michael felt slightly jealous of them because they were having the best childhood unlike him. While he was their age, he was smuggling drugs and getting beaten up by the drug and weapon traffickers. He explored the grand staircase of Mazeroth, which was used to access the various floors and rooms in the castle. The staircases were moving at regular intervals. There were hundreds of portraits hanging on the wall and they seemed to be talking to each other. Surprisingly, some of them disappeared from their portraits when they noticed Michael staring at them. They looked afraid as though they knew he was the Dark Lord. Michael did not mind them as he was getting used to being the Dark Lord. He started to accept the fact he was the Dark Lord. The more he embraced his identity, the more powerful he became. After roaming around the castle for some time, he made his way outside, reaching the castle grounds. He walked further and further away from the castle under the light of millions of stars. What was in front of him was a massive lake, and on the other side of the lake was a forest which reminded him of the Forbidden Forests. The forest was thick with trees, such as beech, oak, banyan, pine, and yew, as well as undergrowth such as knotgrass and thorns. With his X-ray eyes, he could notice the paths, brooks, and some clearings. Off the path, the way seemed almost impassable. System, something is blocking the communication between me and Azazel. Can you fix it? Of course, the system can. The host just needs to pay 10,000 badass points, the system's greedy voice sounded in his voice. Fortunately, he amassed quite a bit of badass points during the battle in Hades. By quite a bit, he meant 60,000 badass points. Because of the battle, he was able to afford the fix. Do it and scan if I'm being watched. Done. Within a second, the system fixed the issue as Michael was able to contact Azazel yet again. Azazel, Lord Lucifer. I was trying to contact you. Azazel sounded slightly alarmed. Something happened? You talking to Ghost? Michael heard Iag's voice. Ghost, we have a fucking problem. Both Iag and Azazel sounded alarmed. He wondered why. We are not the only one who has a portal to the nether realm. There is someone else harvesting the undeads, said Iag. She was quite annoyed rather than alarmed. They came out of seclusion because of Cain, as he said he was having a bad feeling. She hated him for being right every single time. What do you mean harvesting? Asked Michael. They are putting the undeads into cages and teleporting them to who knows where through a portal. They are capturing all the powerful undeads, Sarba explained to Michael. Do you know who they are? Somehow Michael doubted they would know the answer because whoever they were, they must be extremely powerful, and if they were harvesting the undeads, they were planning something nefarious. Powerful people with nefarious reasons would rarely be careless enough to let their identity be known to others. No, my lord, but they all look like angels, wings and metal armor, said Azazel. Ironic, isn't it? Angels harvesting undeads. Ghost, I have ordered Azazel to stop summoning undeads through our own portal. It might draw the attention of these unknown people. Michael heard Cain after Iag. If he was there, he would have done the same. He was glad Cain was there to deal with things when he and Gaia weren't around. We should monitor them continually before resuming the summoning. If they are building an undead army just like us, we will need an army more than ever. So we can't stop the summoning forever. Record everything. Do as you said, but if they notice you, order Dalar to destroy the portal opener immediately. Will do, Cain agreed. Where is Gaia? Let us talk to her, but don't tell we asked. She's not here, Michael said to Iag. Someone's coming. Talk to you later. Michael quickly closed the connection when he heard rustling from behind. He slowly turned around. What are you doing here all alone? The young professor he saw at the staff table was standing in front of him with her brow arched up. There was no one in the area except him and the professor. Just sightseeing, professor. From far away, Wilkes and Nightmare were looking at them. If it wasn't for the professor, they would have gone to meet Ghost. You are planning something, 66, and whatever you're planning, it's not gonna happen as long as I'm here. But she came closer to him. If you do something, her voice turned seductive as she ran her fingers through his chest. I can overlook and even give you some extra credits, she whispered into his ears seductively. Scan completed. The host is only being watched by Nightmare and the half-elf. The system encouraged him to make a move on the professor. It sounded amused. Is that so? Michael wrapped his arm around her wrist. Sounds dirty, but I like it. Michael pulled the professor closer to him. They both could feel each other's warm breath brushing past their faces. I hope you don't mind the fact I'm engaged. He gently bit her ears before whispering. Gaia, who was disguised as the professor, shivered with mixed feelings. Her anger was soaring through the roof and tears formed in her eyes without her control. Nice disguise, but you forget to remove the ring on your finger, Professor, he chuckled. Her mind went blank for a second. The tears rolled out of her eyes as she felt so relieved knowing that he wasn't going to cheat on her. She planned to prank him, expecting him to chase away her, thinking she was a professor. But her prank backfired chaotically when he did the opposite of her expectation. You fucking bastard, she began to pound his chest. You gave me a heart attack. Don't do that again, I will kill you. She became madder looking at Michael, who was laughing. It was because she looked extremely cute when she was mad and he couldn't resist the urge to laugh. Wilkes was confused as he was staring at them with wide eyes. He never expected the human to be so lovey-dovey with a professor. Nightmare, on the other hand, was completely stunned. It took him a couple of minutes to notice the ring on the girl's finger. He finally realized what just happened. How did you end up like this? Asked Michael. They were still too close to each other. Gaia was hugging him as though she was a koala bear. It only took her a couple of minutes to explain to him what happened after she was teleported away by the system. After her story, Michael told her about what was happening in the Nether Realm. And just as they were about to talk about finding the Dark Elf, Gilrain came carrying a bucket full of grayish mushrooms. Ha! Gilrain squinted his eyes as for a second, he could swear they were hugging each other. However, when he realized the girl was the new professor, he dismissed the thought and cursed himself for thinking like that. What the hell are you doing? Before Gilrain could ask anything, Gaia shouted at him. The big man started to get freaked out by the new professor. Professor Alani asked for these rain cloud mushrooms. Professor Steinmeier, I assume these are for that moron who got his ass kicked by a dwarf. Gilrain was shocked to see Gaia calling a student moron. He had never seen a professor utter such a word so casually. He scratched his head, thinking about what to say next. I heard Professor Lane is talking about suspending that moron. It was funny actually. First, he got his ass kicked by a dwarf and now he's facing a suspension for getting his ass kicked. Gaia laughed. What was that about? Asked Michael. Professor Jane was the dark-robed professor with dark hair who was slapping a student in the Great Hall before the sorting ceremony. Michael was curious about what happened. Simple version, the guy is a warrior. Because of some reason, he chose to squabble with a dwarf in the House of Blacksmiths. According to him, the dwarf carefully planned and ambushed him, which is utter bullshit. He got his ass handed over to him by the dwarf, so what's gonna happen to the dwarf professor? Since Gilrain was looking at them, Michael addressed Gaia as professor. Nothing, Gilrain said, he is a warrior and in house warriors, getting beaten up by the other house students is considered a shame as the warriors feel they are superior to the others. The student is lucky the head prefect did not expel him. Now Michael understood what was going on here. However, he had one doubt. Professor Steinmeier, I thought you are the head of House Warriors. I am, Gaia said. Professor Serene Jane is head of Alchemists and I heard he's been eyeing the combat teacher role for some time. Isn't it true, Gilrain? She turned her gaze towards Gilrain, who felt uncomfortable talking about the politics amongst the staff in front of a student. Seeing how he reacted, Gaia rolled her eyes. I heard this from a student and it seems everyone knows it. No point in hiding, you big dumbo. She stepped towards Gilrain. As the head of House Warriors, I have the right to know everything related to my house and you're gonna tell me everything. Gaia put her hand on Gilrain's shoulder and smiled. That smile freaked him out more. Or I'm gonna shove those mushrooms so far up your ass and you will taste them in your mouth. She left the area after threatening Gilrain. God, what just hit Mazeroth? Gilrain mumbled under his breath, looking at her figure disappearing into the darkness. Chapter 433, Mysterious Employer of 66-inch. Hey Gilrain, I want to ask you something. Michael came to Gilrain's side. The big man was still staring at the door that Gaia walked through. Hello, he had to pat Gilrain on the shoulder to get his attention. Oh sorry, did you say something? Yeah, I want to ask if someone from another house could share the room with me. Gilrain was taken aback by surprise. No, God no. You just came to Mazorth and you already found a mate. The big man was frantically shaking his head. It's not a girl, he's just a friend, Michael quickly said before Gilrain could get another idea. Why can't he stay in his room? Asked Gilrain as Michael waved at Nightmare to bring Wilkes closer. Hearing the footsteps, Gilrain turned around and saw Wilkes walking towards them. The moment he saw the half-elf, Gilrain discovered why Ghost was asking such a question. Oh, Michael noticed the sadness emerge in Gilrain's eyes for a moment when he saw Wilkes. You can share rooms. There are no rules against a student from another house bunking in another house room. It's a common thing here. When Wilkes came to them, Gilrain patted Wilkes on the shoulder. Have it rough, eh? It will get better, don't fret about it. Gilrain sounded as though he had personal experience of getting bullied. It was obvious to everyone that Gilrain isn't a pure-blooded human. Michael guessed he might be half giant and half human. Compared to the humans, the elves were next-level racists. Hence, Wilkes was affected by the racism much more than Gilrain. Yeah, he's having it rough. So he will stay with us. Michael placed his hand on Wilkas's shoulder with a smile. Wilkas felt like he was being stared at by a predator as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Wilkas wasn't a soft-hearted one. The life on the streets forged him to be cold, cunning, and headstrong. However, something about the human before him sent a chill through his spine. You two should return to the Great Hall. Your prefects will be waiting there. Gilrain patted the youngsters before gently stroking Nightmare's chin. Good luck with your classes tomorrow. Especially in your combat classes. Professor Steinmeier freaks me out. You didn't see? Wilkas asked Gilrain. Saw what? Nothing. Come on 45, it's way past your bedtime. Michael dragged him away from Gilrain before Wilkas spilled the beans about Gaia and him. See you tomorrow Gilrain. Michael waved at Gilrain before making his way to the Great Hall. The Great Hall was once again packed with students when he arrived. Few of the elves gave Wilkas a death glare while some just ignored him completely as though he didn't exist. Michael could care less about these racist assholes. House alchemists, follow me in an orderly manner, said a curly brown-haired youngster. Arch-energy flow will be blocked in 3, 2, 1. A voice echoed through the hall. When the voice said 1, the arch-energy in the hall disappeared. However, Michael did not feel any difference. In fact, he could feel the arch-energy running in his body. The changes the system made to you when you were in the southern continent applies in Akilan realm too. You can thank me now, it's not like you did it for free. Anyways, I appreciate the help, said Michael in his mind. As they were following the perfect, more and more elves down the hall were staring at Wilkas. Some of the elves were slapping him on the head for no reason. The perfect seemed to ignore it and Michael started to get annoyed by this. Fuckers, Wilkas cursed under his breath. When he received the invitation to join Maze Roth, he was happy in his life for the first time. He thought he would finally be free of elves and their bullying. His fantasy was shattered as he realized this place was no different than R, filled with elves. On top of these racist bullies, he ended with a human who somehow saw him breaking space rings and stealing stuff. Wilkas still had no idea what the human wanted from him. As Michael expected, they followed the prefect to a wall where there was a portrait of a lady with green hair hanging on. Password, the lady asked in a melodious voice. Proporium triecto. The portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it and found themselves in the alchemist common room, a cozy, square room. Once they arrived inside the room, they were welcomed by the roaring fire, squashy armchairs, and sofas. The dormitories were reached by climbing the winding mahogany staircase, decorated with emerald green. Posters of a few old people and a 12-feet-tall massive painting of a green-haired lady with 2 saplings in her hand were covered with thick golden blankets. She was one of the 4 founders of Maze Roth and the patron of House Alchemist, Ingrid Stenham. Gold chandeliers cast a warm glow all around, making the room cozier and shinier. The room was full of squashy armchairs, tables, and a bulletin board where school notices, ads, lost posters, etc. could be posted. The common room was decorated in several shades of emerald green, which was associated with the house. The common room was comfortable, but not more comfortable than the warrior house basement. There were also bookcases located in the room, filled with various novels and forms of literature. The room was instantly hated by Michael due to the lack of darkness and, to be exact, too much green. He wanted to wear sunglasses to cover his eyes from all the greenness. Boys' rooms are this way. The perfect pointed to the mahogany staircase at the far end of the room. Girls are through that door. He then pointed at the door on the right as the girls made their way to their rooms instead of spending some time in the common room. Michael and Wilkas reached the dormitory by climbing the stairs. In front of them was a narrow corridor, and on either side of the corridors were doors that had no number of any sort. Take a room you like, we have so many. The prefect's voice came from behind as the boys began to get into a room one by one. Michael loved some privacy and silence, hence he chose the last room at the far end of the corridor. The room was equipped with a centrally located mini fireplace and a bunk bed flanked by a set of windows and space for storing personal belongings. On the windowsill, a water jug was placed, in case any of the students should feel the need for a drink in the middle of the night. A wooden board was located on either side of the bed. A wooden chair and dresser were located on one side of the bed, near the nightstand. A wooden bookcase was located on the other side of the bed with books on top of it. The room had stone walls and wooden floors. The windows had emerald green curtains just like the carpet with the house crest, a single tree in the center of it. "I'll take the top bed." Michael took off his silver long coat and hung it on the dresser before jumping up onto his bed. "Are you gonna tell me who the hell are you and what do you want from me?" Nightmare flapped his wings to land on Michael's chest. "What's your plan in life?" Instead of answering Wilca's question, he questioned Wilca's. "You're gonna live your whole life scrounging for coins like a petty thief?" Asked Michael. "Nah, he will get caught one day and probably die in prison. If he didn't get beaten to death first, so you two are now my well-wishers?" Wilca's rolled his eyes, plugging into the comfy chair beside him. "We can be," Nightmare said. "There's someone who would pay a lot for your talent." "Wilca's, is that so?" Wilca's leaned back to listen to his sales pitch. "Since you might have grown up in the streets, you probably know what kind of men would pay a lot for thieves like you. As a matter of fact, I know, and I've worked for many. I probably know the person you are talking about. Trust me, you don't. No one knows him. You just do our work without asking any questions and he would pay you quite handsomely." "What are you saying?" "Hey, I'm just a petty thief. I stole a scroll years ago which showed me how to break open space rings. Okay. Here, I said it. What kind of work can I do to earn a lot? I'm not a cultivation monster like you, but you are a rune master and my employer is looking for an ambitious rune master. Your star level doesn't matter. If you serve him well, he can make you climb up the star levels and even reach the 6-star level. You can't bullshit a bullshitter 66 or whatever your name is." Knock. Knock. Someone knocked on the door. Wilca's was closer to the door, so he opened the door to see an old lady with a trolley full of stacks of clothes. Oh, the woman seemed surprised to see a half-elf. Several seconds later, she put a smile on her face. "Your uniforms, dear. 2 alchemist robes, I presume?" asked the old woman. "Nah." Wilax shook his head, pretending he didn't see the surprised look on her face. "1 alchemist and 1 rune master, please." The old woman picked up an emerald green robe from the top of the trolley and a navy blue one from under. He handed over the neatly pressed robes to Wilca's. "There he is." Just when the lady was about to turn the trolley and leave, a tall, lean, and mean-looking elf arrived. He was not alone. He had a group of 5 elves behind him. All of them were wearing gray robes with golden borders. Sensing the trouble, the old woman rushed away from the room as fast as her old legs could move. "Oh no, you don't." The elves grabbed the door before Wilax could shut it close. Nightmare craned his neck to see 5 elves walking into their room like they owned the room. One of the elves leading the group pushed Wilca's onto the chair behind. "So the filthy rat is hiding in the sewers. Guys, should we not do this now?" Wilca's tried to wiggle himself out of the trouble. "This is the perfect time to do this. Guys, close the door. We don't want the rat to escape, do we?" The elf put his leg Wilca's chest and pressed him against the chair. "Evindel, do we really have to waste this healing potion on him?" the elven girl asked worriedly. She seemed to care more about the healing potion than what was about to happen to Wilca's. "We can't risk getting expelled, Lena. Especially because of this filth." The elves completely ignored Michael. Nightmare turned his head towards Michael and saw him lay down on the bed with his eyes closed. He did not seem like he was going to intervene. "We really shouldn't do this," said Wilca's, "or we like to do, plap." The elf slapped Wilca's with enough force to produce an ear-piercing sound. The hand mark was imprinted on Wilca's pale face. His face reddened. "Goo-plap." Wilca's words were abruptly interrupted by another slap. This time, blood started to seep through his nostrils due to the force. "Ghost, do something," Nightmare whispered, yet Ghost remained still. "You're tuning into the Path of the True Immortal YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.